What a profound joy it is!
We're facing the greatest evil the world has ever known. We helped the wrong person steal the wrong thing.
Anything you want to add?
Okay.
The bridge is protected by an ancient trap. We must not trigger the mechanism.
I may have triggered the mechanism. So, sorry.
You heard it up top. We are back with a special one this week because things are going a little medieval as we talk the fantasy epic in theaters right now. That's right. It's Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves here on Normies Like Us. Your hosts, Colin the Bard.
Mike and Kynan.
And this is Jolga the Barbarian.
Hello, Jolga.
Hello, Jolga.
You know, we're here eating a potato, you know, got a short attention span, let's say. We'll get into all of it, all things in Honor Among Thieves. But D&D, boys, you know, we've been known to dabble, right? You know, so
yeah,
right.
I think we've done just a full-on episode talking about our personal kind of adventures playing the games, but just to remind normies, we do partake in it, right, guys? Mike, you're a dungeon master of sorts.
Well, I'm sitting here with 2 dungeon masters that have both dungeon mastered for me before. So
that's right.
You guys are the experts here, right?
Right. Well, technically, there can only be one dungeon master, so we'll have to do a lightning duel.
Shit.
But for now, we'll do an episode. And I never DM'd until actually after Colin did. Colin, you know, you could expand on it, but you kind of got us back into it maybe 10 years ago. And then after that, I started running a game that we were running for a little while, but then we kind of stopped. February 2020, right when pandemic hit, and it's been slow going getting it back up to speed. So I would love to start playing again. We did do a little Baldur's Gate. Maybe we'll hear that in this movie.
Yeah.
For a little bit. And I've been 3D printing a ton of stuff, you know. So
you have. You made us some really cool things too. Oh my God.
Them.
Yes.
He's showing a dice tower.
If you're listening to the audio, you need to go to our YouTube channel and check out what Mike is holding in front of the camera right now.
Jesus Louises.
Hard to get right.
It is a dice tower that he 3D printed that is a tower and
like an Elden Ring ice crystal tower spiral staircase. Anyway, I have a lot of
love it.
Yeah.
And I just haven't used them. So I've been intending to, and this movie was really fun. So anyway, that's where we're at. Right. We've all played. I played when I was a kid. We play now, and we want to do it more. Colin,
I just want to comment very quickly on what you said of why your party disbanded, Mike. You know, you kind of hear 2 things of, COVID killed us playing D&D, or the opposite, where people say, I had more time online than ever to put up virtual sessions. We were just kind of never that crew. I've never really experimented or played around with online Dungeons and Dragons and never really had a taste for it, honestly.
Listen, guys, I would love to play more D&D with either of you guys. And I mean, with Mike, with our game, we almost started it back up, last kind of fall back in 2022. And I even created my character in Hero Forge, 3D printed that. So I'm ready to go with my character,
the best
model. I'm ready.
Yeah, we have this stuff ready to go. We just need to make it happen. We've always been more into the tactile. Colin, you always did great, you know, setups with your arenas and like little uses of, you know, Lego figurines and these things that you would build, you know, little trees and stuff. It was really inspiring. And then when I got a 3D printer, it's like, I'm going to do that. But maybe virtual is possible one day as well. But it's something about rolling the dice around a table with your friends. It's really magical.
I'd still love to do an in-person one if we can set it up sometime. But I think both of you guys, the way you ran campaigns, very creatively, sort of home brewing, mixing in things, not, you know, strictly following D&D lore, which we're going to be talking about more in this video with this movie. But
I'm excited. That's going to be some weird stuff. Absolutely.
But I would like to transition then to say, you know, there's something about playing with your friends and all these hijinks and, you know, crazy stuff going on, and, you know, without getting too far ahead, I think this movie does a good job of capturing the vibe of going on a crazy campaign with your buddies and joking around a table and stuff. Even though it's set in world, it has that energy, and I think that's
it has a great party composition. And I'm excited to talk about all of it.
I'll he goes to often say, let's talk about our journey to the theaters. I'll say I went with a great party. Jacob, I went with you to see this film, as I typically do.
That's right.
And no young teenagers bugging us this time, all a scream. But I do want to shout out the one weird thing we did see was a commercial for this movie that was like a weird pre-roll. Did you have this, Mike, where it was an interview with the cast being like, hello, we're just so
it was
happy
like, well, it started
you
as,
came to see the movies.
There was like
a weird 3D thing, yes.
Behind the, like it was like a 3D effect of a dragon behind the screen, and then it was like breathing behind, and it was like protruding from the canvas of the actual screen.
Yes,
and then it goes to the cast, and they say a little thing, and then the actual movie starts. I thought that was very strange too.
But they were very much, thank you for coming to see the movie in a theater.
Yes.
Seriously, thank
heroes.
you.
You're the real heroes.
For spending your dollars.
Hugh Grant truly seeming like a zombie in it, like, I want to say that you're the real heroes. It's like, wow, they woke him up for this.
He had some interesting interviews too, where he was a little maybe cranky and didn't want to be answering questions. But, we'll get into his role. But that was
he
very
also
bizarre.
had what he called a Christian Bale moment on the set of this film, Mike, in that he screamed at someone and was very mean to them. So
that doesn't surprise me. I mean, I could see out of everyone in the kind of cast kind of taking this just as a paycheck, and
well, we'll see. It's weird though. He seems like like sometimes you'll meet a nice guy and they turn out to be the villain. So it's wild.
Wow.
But I think I am a hero because I did go to the movie theater to watch this. I ended up going to an AMC where they were I went on a quest. I needed to retrieve the D20 of popcorn holding. It's a promotional giant D20. I made that name up.
I've heard about this.
Yeah, so they were a promotional popcorn thing only at AMC's. You get these big ass D20 dice, and I've seen them all over eBay for like a couple $100. People are snatching them up and putting their D&D dice in it. And I said, you know what?
Wow.
I'm going to try to go to the AMC and just see what happens. And I go there, and lo and behold, I was successful in my quest. And also, we have retrieved...
Oh my God. That is amazing.
Yeah.
Big boy.
It's a big boy. I ate the entire thing.
Popcorn goes in there.
Yeah.
The latch. I love that.
Yeah, it's actually...
How much did that cost to buy?
So this was $34.99 with popcorn in it. Unlimited refills.
Sure, absolutely.
So I'm the real hero.
5 times.
I'm stimulating the theater economy. You're welcome. We'll put this right.
Absolutely.
But how are your crowds?
Oh, that looks
amazing.
Hey, thank you.
It's like so big, detailed.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, maybe not $34.99, but I think for the sentimentality and being as a fan of D&D and playing the games, you put all your dice in there. I think it's going to be great. But I could have got 2. I should have got 2 because you can sell them on eBay, and I was not thinking straight.
Oh,
but that's because I'm a hero and not a villain. I'm not doing this for profit. Come on.
Right. Yeah, you're going to split the loot among the townspeople.
All the theater goers will get the piece of popcorn. This is for you. But how are your crowds? How was it?
You could pour that thing into the garbage and you'd be filling it back up and you would make your money's worth.
That's true. They asked you, do you want popcorn in it or on the side? I said, you're putting it in there. I'll wash it out later.
And again,
I'm not going to eat out of this?
Audio only, go to our YouTube. Check this out. You're going to want to see this. Very important.
Mm-hmm. It is.
You can only see it on video.
Here's how our audience was. We did a matinee, as we like to do, a Sunday matinee. And those have been sold out in the past. Would you agree, Jacob?
Sometimes, yeah,
sometimes.
Mostly full.
This one may be a third, right?
This one, yeah. It wasn't completely dead, but it was definitely less than half full theater. I think that might have just been because of the time and because I have read
people were looking into John Wick, dog. I don't know,
but I've read a little about how its opening weekend was, and it's doing pretty well. So I feel good about it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But what about you, Mike? How was your audience size?
I ended up going to the Grove here in LA because I usually don't go to AMC, but I had to, and I'm like, there's no chance you're going to get one of these at the Grove in LA. First of all, if you want to feel unattractive, just go to the Grove in sweatpants like I did to watch D&D on this Sunday afternoon because everyone's got their Sunday best on. But anyway, they had Holga's costume there, which was neat to check it out after the movie because I didn't have a frame of reference and then after you come out. But it was a mostly full crowd. I was in an IMAX theater just on accident because it had a showtime around when I wanted to go. So 90% capacity, and everybody loved it, honestly. The person next to me afterwards was like, so what do you think about it? Because he saw my popcorn thing, and he was geeking out. He's like, what is that? like, yeah, I've been playing D&D forever. He's like, oh, I never played it. I just want to watch the movie. So he seemed to, him and his girl were cracking up. Like, even non-fans were having a good time with this. So,
well, I will say, in our theater, even though it wasn't completely full, I think the audience was enjoying it,
Yes.
laughing at the jokes,
A
really
lot of
getting into it.
laughs.
I also talked to my sister. She saw this on Thursday night, and she doesn't know, really anything about D&D, and she loved it, and she went with her friends, and they loved it. So, everyone that's seeing this thing is having a good time.
91% critic score, 93% audience score. It is getting a lot of love.
Yo,
out there. Yeah,
that's
I think
high.
It's better
I'm
than
really
anyone
happy
really
to hear that.
expected it to be, right?
Yeah, so
Hey,
shocking.
For me, certainly.
I remember when cast photos sort of came out of like people filming and stuff, and I just remember thinking like, Michelle Rodriguez like dressed as a barbarian, like, boy, I just don't think this is gonna work. I'm gonna go ahead and shout out. She's my favorite part of this movie. I'm so excited. Let's jump into it. Let's talk D&D Honor Among Thieves.
Yeah, I'm just gonna roll for initiative real quick. 15.
Ooh, wow. We're back here on Normies Like Us, where Mike just rolled up a hell of an initiative. And that's a good sign because we're talking Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves here. We're talking the role-playing game. We've said it. This is the one. It's the granddaddy.
The originator, the pen and pencil and paper.
Gary Gygax is going like, what's this J.R. Tolkien guy writing about? Elves and dwarves? Yeah, okay, I'll take one of those. I'll take one of those. Okay, what if you could put points into how they talk and did things? And people are like, yeah, I'd love to do that.
Right.
Well, I want to ask you guys before we get into the plot of the game, like, what's your background with knowing, specifically Dungeons and Dragons lore, owlbears, the Red Wizards of Thay? Are you familiar with any of these things as DMs yourselves?
That is such an amazing question. Now, you pointed out up top a homebrew. Now, a homebrew, for those listening who don't know, is your own set of rules. When you play Dungeons and Dragons, which is a group sort of imagination or hallucination scenario.
It's like improv with dice, yeah.
The fun is coming up with the improv, Mike. Now, the barrier to entry that you hear from people a lot of times is like, well, okay, well, I wouldn't know how to do that. You would be shocked to hear that when you get the Dungeons Master's Guide or these other things that set up the game,
and all that stuff,
there are campaigns like you guys keep mentioning. There is true storylines where you can go, okay, you can be 5 random characters who do an adventure everyone else has done. Now, my background history with that is that I really have not done those since I was like 8 years old, right? Like since then, pretty much every game I've done, I don't know about you, Mike, but the fun has been just coming up with it.
Yeah, making your own world, making your own story and characters, and referencing other things, and like, making it your own, using it as a baseline, right? You can take the monsters and things like, oh, there's gremlins or whatever. I don't know if gremlins is a thing, but
no, but you could make one
probably
quite
gremlins.
easily.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I think that's what a lot of, once you sort of graduate from, you understand how the game works, you can kind of use it that way and make your own story.
Yeah, so a lot of people do homebrew. A lot of some of the most popular, YouTubers are doing like homebrew stuff and, live play. I've
Critical
only done
Role.
Yeah. Some of their stuff might be canon because I know like Joe Manganiello stole the hand of Vecna at one point. Everybody knows Vecna from Stranger Things, so they might do a little bit of both.
The Demogorgon, these things from Stranger Things, they are real D&D names.
So shout out to Stranger Things because this would not get made, I don't think, if that show didn't get D&D like kind of going again. Maybe who knows?
Yeah, you might be right.
But I never we do homebrew too, but I do use the creatures and I have the monster manual. So there's several things that I recognized for sure.
Now, I have in the past said one of my great joys as a child was getting the J.R. Tolkien bestiary, which was just his little drawings of all the little monsters that were came up. Since I was a kid, I would ask for specifically just the monster manual and then just come up with all my own stuff because I love looking at the monsters and things like beholders, displacer beasts, wink, wink, all these other things, Jacob. That to me is Dungeons and Dragons. That's the stuff that I get fun and excited about. Now, the Red Wizards of Thay. Now, as a guy who has been playing Dungeons and Dragons probably for, I would say, 21 years, maybe, not super familiar with storylines like that.
No. Like I know who Morton Kynan is when his name gets dropped in the movie, but like that was just because there's a player handbook called Morton Kynan's Tone of Foes. I don't know anything about the main lore. I know the proper nouns like Neverwinter
For
and Baldur's
me,
Gate, but yeah, this is all kind of new.
that's
How
what
about you?
that's what I'm
Yes.
familiar with is like the places, the names of the places. And actually, I primarily know that not from playing D&D, but from the video games that are based on D&D, such as Baldur's Gate, Neverwinter Nights,
Yep.
Icewind Dale, these old CRPGs that I like to play and nerd out about, which use the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons like second edition rule set in a video game.
Mm-hmm.
And now, of course, we have Baldur's Gate 3, which kind of revived the series 20 years later.
Oh yeah.
So that's where I recognize, Baldur's Gate, which those games are set in the Forbidden Realms campaign setting, which is what this movie is set in, which is the world of Faerun, right? And that's where you hear these names like Baldur's Gate. The prison they're in the beginning is in Icewind Dale, which is like that snowy region they're in. So
Okay.
That's so cool.
yeah. So it's a lot of old references to those games, which I really appreciate.
I think that's cool because even if you don't catch all of them, at least for me, there was enough that like pretty much every scene there would at least be something that I was familiar enough with to be like, that's a hobgoblin, that's a this or that, and even the names of the spells. Like it was very rich for that as a D&D fan. But I think also to reiterate, this seemed to be a lot of fun for non-D&D fans as well. The audience scores reflects that. But should we jump into it? Or yeah, go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, I just want to agree with you that there's a lot of Easter eggs and references, but it's not necessary to know anything about them to enjoy this movie.
No, and I want to say also probably before we jump into it, we're going to spoil everything. I think it's so good that you should pause this and go watch it if you haven't.
Please.
We'll just say up top, we all
I'm
really
very
liked
worried.
it and would recommend it. It's a very fun movie. And
I think this should continue.
Be a hero. Yeah.
Absolutely. Be a hero. I think this is very, very good stuff. Not to spoil my rating.
We're going to dive in. We're going to get a bunch of examples of this, but I want to say up top now that this is, above all else, a comedy film. It's a comedy medieval adventure film. Mm-hmm. And Jacob, I want you to say what you said about how it's not Marvel-y meta humor.
Well, I think it's sort of influenced by Marvel, but it's humor that works within the setting of the universe. And I think it's humor that respects like the character and the world that it's in. And you don't have that modern kind of quipping that even something like Willow that we enjoyed, to compare Willow to this similar kind of a D&D party going on.
Willow breaks the fourth wall. Yeah, you're absolutely right sometimes.
I feel like this is actually a lot better written than Willow in that way.
I would agree.
And stronger
and there's a
world
lot of
building.
humor in here. And there is like quipping, but it's a way that respects the world that they're in, I think.
And I read...
Well, I read a great article, Mike, on /film that said, and what the D&D film gets right about Dungeons and Dragons is, it is a comedy film, because what you do when you're in the sessions of, all right, Jacob, the hobgoblin is running at you, and he's got his cleaver up, but like he falls on his way. What do? You're asking your friends to like buy in and have fun. And I know we keep saying improv, and I know that again sounds like a barrier to this, but it's the comedy aspect comes from you just like being silly and having fun. It's not you doing anything necessarily funny. Yeah.
And playing your character. Like in the first game the first campaign that we had, Colin, I was a barbarian and I played him as a very kind of like cocky, aggressive guy.
Yes.
Who would try to get in fights even when he kind of gets humiliated in a funny way. And I think the improv there is in talking to these NPCs, which are played by you, the DM, and as your character kind of questioning NPCs and interacting with them and stuff. And like, that's where the comedy kind of comes out of from playing with your friends.
Yeah. And just randomness that can happen when you're rolling dice. I think this movie captures, like I said, most purely like what a campaign is from like the beginning to the end of like, here's our characters to fighting the big bad. Like this feels like a whole D&D campaign in one movie. And you get something like there's a character who slips and, there's a graveyard scene that was teased. Minor spoiler in the trailers. There's a guy who slipped and broke his neck on a bathtub. It's like, that guy just rolled a 1. He just rolled a 1 on getting out of the bathtub, and now something funny happened because of it, and sometimes that happens too, So
yes,
the randomness can create moments of humor, and this movie can capture that spirit very well. They definitely have a love and a knowledge, I think, of the source game, and I think it comes through in the writing and the scenarios and even the pacing.
one last thing before we start getting into the details of the plot. Like you said, it's a comedy, and we should shout out the directors of this movie.
Yes.
And well, first of all, I want to ask Mike, because I know Colin, you already know this, but are you familiar with a show called Freaks and Geeks that was on about 20 years ago? The original Stranger Things, you might say, in that there was an episode where they played D&D in the 80s. It's a movie about the 80s, movie, but series.
Set.
So are you familiar with that at all?
I'm familiar as being like an early like Michael Cera and like Judd Apatow crew thing, right?
Michael Cera's not in it, but James Franco is in it.
Seth
Rogen is in it.
That's right. Yeah,
Linda Cardellini was like the main character, and her brother was played by a guy named John Francis Daley.
Okay.
He was the original, Stranger Things kid, and that him and his friends were like the freaks and the geeks, and they played D&D and did nerd stuff in the 80s. And that kid grew up and directed this movie.
Amazing.
John Francis Daley, as well as Jonathan Goldstein, the directing duo. They also made the Vacation remake, as well as the movie Game Night, which got a lot, good reviews.
Game Night's
good. About gaming. Yeah, they know what's up.
Yeah, sure. They like gaming, Mike.
And they also wrote,
familiar with the experience. Yeah.
Spider-Man Homecoming, right, Colin, as well as the Horrible Bosses movies. So they're kind of based in the comedy world, right? So they bring a lot of comedy chops to this movie.
Yeah.
I just think that's interesting that kid grew up to make a D&D movie.
An amazing point. I love that for him. There's a social media post that they put out now with him, Martin Starr, and the other man whose name I apologize, I do not know, but the original geek trio.
Yes.
Returning to the same game 20 years later to promote this movie. That's
incredible. Yes.
That is really, really awesome. But yeah, let's jump into it, I guess. I mean, I kind of...
Hell yeah.
Let's break it down like a campaign, right? This is our first session, because there's so many little adventures in this. It goes at such a breakneck pace. I feel like this is what Rise of Skywalker could have been if they... Because you go to a ton of places, but it feels like there's just the right number of beats and payoff in each little one that it doesn't feel like we're going too fast. And I just think it's lovely. So our intro, our first session is the prison break, where we introduce kind of our first main characters. And I just want to say before we get into the prison, I love the opening here, where we get a spooky wagon, and it's very dark. It's like, is this Game of Thrones? We get what I presume is a hobgoblin prisoner, and everybody's being so careful. They chain him to the ground, and there's a track that he must follow. Prisoner moving, right? And it's like, this guy's a badass. And then he gets taken to his cell where he meets his new cellmates, and we're given this dark, brooding tone, and then they're about to flip it.
But, Mike, it's not just the tone. Practical.
Oh,
it's a guy in a costume
and
who's
it looks
playing
great.
this monster.
As good as the Lord of the Rings.
Doors swinging open and like rising like they do. I'm like, that looks amazing. It's not CG. The horses coming in. I'm like, that looks amazing. It's not CG. Linking to the basement of this, these chains, this weird little prison system has. I'm like, that looks amazing. It's not 3D.
Mm-hmm. No, we get a lot of practical here, 150 million, and they get a lot out of it. So I think it looks great, but they're starting to set you up like, oh, this is going to be a dark, brooding, like.
But it's for
serious.
Nothing. We don't come back to any of this stuff for even another second, Mike. So the
Which
fact
is the
that
most
you're putting
D&D
this
thing
much
ever.
money into it, I love it. I love it.
Right.
And how many campaigns have started with a prison break?
Yeah. Perfect.
Perfect way to get your party together. They all meet in prison or something, and then they break out.
So we meet our first two characters here.
Comes into his new cell, and he meets Edgin the Bard and Holga the Barbarian.
Right? Oh my God. And Edgin is sitting. So this is where, like, I'm going to get super annoying. And I know that I'm going to rewatch this 5,000 times like I have The Suicide Squad, because I'm like, oh, this is one of the best scripts I've seen in a modern blockbuster.
Mm-hmm.
We're introduced to Edgin knitting, right? He's making these little knitting things. Perfect character beat where, as a screenwriter, you're like, what's a funny way to introduce our funny character in an intimidating setting? He's doing something innocuous like knitting something.
Right.
That's so atypical of like a straight hero in an action blockbuster thing. This is
Casting
great.
Chris Pine, and I think this was a brilliant decision to cast Chris Pine as this
the most
goofy
handsome
bard character,
charismatic person in existence, and it's
instead
good.
of like a
and he's
prototypical hero.
making comedy beats where he's like turning to Olga and he's going like, you know what? forget the fingers. I'm not gonna do gloves. I'm gonna make it mittens. And he's just like blowing it. He's so intense. Like you're getting character stuff where it's like this guy is meticulous. He's a planner. And then later, when you realize for 2 years he's been working on these as a gift to his daughter, and that's what it's all about. It's even better character beat. It's such the writing
pays off.
is just top notch. It's so good, guys.
And if I may, Colin, having fingers was plan A, but mitten was plan B. And we'll get into that as we go along. Even better,
plan
right?
C would be if he put the fingers back, Mike. It'd be great.
Yeah, incredible. So we love it. We love it. And Chris Pine is lovely in this role. Yeah.
Yes.
Not only does it set up his character perfectly, I think it sets up our main duo's relationship perfectly between Edgin and Holga, played by Michelle Rodriguez. Sets up their dynamic where this guy starts like this hobgoblin. You know, he sees this woman in prison. He's like, oh, blah, blah, blah.
Trying to tough guy intimidate.
Yeah, trying to tough guy her. And she easily just like kills him, right? I think she kills him.
I believe she kills
definitely kills him. Yeah.
And then later when they're fighting, you see kind of their dynamic is like, oh, Chris Pine is like, you know, we'll get to that. Well, I'm
they are partners and equals. Sex means nothing to them, aka sex as gender means nothing to them, I should say.
They're a platonic friendship with no hint of romance between them, but they're just two really good friends, one male, one female.
With infinite respect.
You don't see that very often in movies like this where you know, they're just a platonic friendship, and
it gets even better as we go along.
You know, the depth of their relationship. Yeah.
Oh, it just gets better and better. It's incredible. Yes.
And let's introduce our character classes while we can. We have a bard, quote unquote, in Edgin. I'll debate that later as we go. Rogue maybe with a proficiency in loot, but definitely Michelle Rodriguez is a barbarian.
Yeah, he does more than just bard stuff, but he does play the lute a lot and sing.
Yeah, but you can just be proficient in an instrument. He doesn't do magic with the lute, but that's getting into D&D weeds.
No, he doesn't do traditional bard magic. Yeah,
he definitely does inspiring word or charm person potentially subconsciously. He's a charismatic guy.
Yeah.
And as we find out, he's part of the Harper's Legion or something,
and we find out why he's in jail now because they have an appeal to get out of prison. They're chopping ice blocks. So during the appeal, we get the backstory of how did we get here.
Yes.
Jonathan, who we love.
This was another thing where immediately when this film was over, I was like, Jacob, that's one of the best written scenes I've ever seen in my life. You get the setup when they're doing ice pick chores, right? And you're seeing, again, Tholga does the hard work. Ed kind of just pokes at the ice and sings. We're building up our characters more. It's this incredible ice shot. We're basically never going to see this practical location again. It's like astounding how it's shot. It's beautiful. There's monsters in the background, too. It's great.
Yep.
Next, we go to their parole. And it's one of those Cool Hand Luke setup of like, he's excited because this person's on the parole board. You as an audience member go like, of course, he has paid off this person. And he begins to tell, he's waiting for this guy. He begins to tell this board his backstory, quote unquote. Yeah. He literally says, I'm going to share my backstory. How else could you relate to me if you didn't know my backstory? Something you do in your first session.
Yeah, and it's essentially an exposition scene. So we get his background and Holga's, what they were doing in prison, everything leading up to where we are now. And it's a good way for, you know, the movie to fill us in on what's going on. And meanwhile, he keeps interrupting and say, is Jonathan here? Like, Jonathan should really be
positive he's not. This is a story that I just know Jonathan would love. And again, as an audience member, you're like, oh, he needs to bribe this guy. What a great scene. This is great.
Yep.
Now, past all the good stuff we get, he's lost his wife. His wife has died to a red wizard's blade. She can't be resurrected. We're getting these things. He didn't really like his life as a quote unquote Harper, this guild of secret spies, right?
Spies basically that are play musicians, but they also do spy stuff while they're musicianing, which is a good cover for them. But he also has a daughter, so he becomes a single father of this daughter, trying to raise her. That's when he meets Holga. She helps raise his daughter. That's why they're such good friends. They have this bond.
She was banished from her barbarian tribe because of her love interest being outside of her class or something, you could say almost, or her character race, right, Mike?
Yeah, their clan is really strict about any type of outsider, even if, you know, so yeah, no go there. And then they meet Forge. They get a crew together. They have the bumbling sorcerer played by Justice Smith. We'll get more on him later, but he's in the crew. He's kind of a learning, maybe a level 1 or 2 sorcerer. We get Forge, who's like a con man, and then they get wind of a big score in this vault that they have a sponsor that wants them to go grab this thing. But also in there is a talisman or totem of resurrection. And Chris Pine is thinking, I can get my wife back. And so they agree to do this job. Only it doesn't go as planned. And him and Holga end up getting caught, if you want to go into that.
And is in fact why they're in prison. So again, we're interrupting the story over and over again. But who comes through? It's Jonathan. Now, this is what I would have called a Karu or a Kisu is what I think they were always called. What is this race type, Mike?
Now it's an Aarakocra.
An Aarakocra. Fascinating. But sort of like the winged men or the bird men, right?
Yeah,
like
full
a bird
wings.
person.
It's a whole bird person. There's a dragonborn on the board too, so they're getting practical effects. But Jonathan rolls up,
full on practical. He comes up. They say, "We're so excited to see you." He says, "Holga now." They enact their plan. She starts beating people up. They grab Jonathan, and just because he's a bird, they jump out a window with his body. So they circumvent the entire thing. The plan that they have been building toward is so absurd. But like Jacob said earlier, the comedy is coming from them going, this is Dungeons and Dragons. What would you do in a Dungeons and Dragons movie to progress the plot forward? And it's so original and so hilarious and so interesting. I am just blown away by it.
Yeah. It'd be like, if you were playing and you're like, I grabbed Jonathan.
Is there a window in this room?
So, Mike, you said Jonathan is like a Birdman? Yeah, he's a Birdman.
How far away is the room?
I jump out the window and I say, "Fly or you die, Birdman!"
Right.
Roll a 20. Oh, looks like
it worked.
It's incredible. Yeah. Do I have enough movement to get to the window? Yeah, you do. I'm jumping out with Jonathan. What? All right, roll for it, and it works.
And like if Jacob's character's like, I jump out too.
I grab his legs as well. Yeah, and then the payoff too is like, but we granted your pardon, so it's totally unnecessary.
That is the window. They say,
but it's what players would do.
Only later when I was talking to my brother did he text me that that's what the end of the joke was because I was laughing so hard, Mike. That is such a perfect scene. But we approved your pardon.
Yep. And now they're wanted anyway.
Hilarious. So already you had like 2 misdirections of like, oh, you thought he was paying Jonathan off. And then you get the misdirection of they were going to grant their pardon anyway. It's really good writing. Right?
It's really
and it sets the tone of what happens in a D&D table. Because another group would maybe just sit there and talk to them and plead their case and get away. But the type of campaign we're doing, we're grabbing Jonathan and jumping out a window. Get
What's
ready.
my diplomacy skill? No. What is my performance mixed with trickery skill?
Can I grapple him?
I'm rolling
and
this
we've all
shit.
played with wild cards. You're like, I go up to this NPC and just punch him in the face. Something like that. Like people do that in D&D.
Yeah.
Well, the whole town's against you now. And it's like, oh.
The concept of murder hobos essentially is player characters who just go around fighting, doing all this crazy stuff, unhinged, and we get flavors of that kind of idea. Well, you don't do that, but like the idea of players doing the unexpected and jumping out the window with Jonathan, like you said, Colin, that set up most unexpected thing and perfectly sets up the tone for this adventure we're going on.
And Jonathan was okay. He didn't
really he was able to fly.
They literally ask. They say he's okay, and they go, "Great, then we did good." And they get up and leave, and it sets up that our 2 lead characters for this film are a platonic couple that just broke out of prison, and you're like, I'm fucking in. This is great.
Right.
They're rogues, they're thieves, but they're, good people at the end of the day. They're not trying to hurt innocent people.
Yeah.
And it also kind of establishes that.
Yes.
So they go back,
priority 1, right?
Dope title sequence.
This is a dope title sequence. In our second session, if this was a D&D thing, you'd say, okay, Prison Break, good job, everybody. See you next week. This now we're going to return to Neverwinter. I want to go see what's going on with my daughter. They find out that Forge has somehow amassed a fortune after their little adventure because Forge was able to escape, the sorcerer escaped, and so did the sponsor. So okay, let's go see what Forge is doing. He's in a position of power. He'd probably help us out. He's got my daughter. I told him to protect her. So that's what they do. They go to Neverwinter to see what's going on, and that's kind of the second session here.
Yeah, and we find out Forge has been caring, being a caretaker to Edgin's daughter, Uncle Forge. But we also find out that he is actually, spoiler alert, not really a good guy and has been lying to Kira, Edgin's daughter, about him and about why he was doing that quest. He told her it was like the rune of wealth, not the rune of resurrection or whatever.
So you would say that and coins would just like fall from the sky, Jacob?
I guess so. Yeah.
Could so.
Cool.
Yeah.
I could use that.
Yeah, have you played D&D? I'm sure coins might fall from the sky in one way or another. I think.
That's
but,
true.
But we
he
also
basically
see.
Yeah, gaslights and says, "Hey, your dad's an asshole," and she's kind of turned on him. He's turned his daughter against him, and you know,
yes,
it's rough for them.
So his true
and again,
motivation,
he's been in prison for
man.
2 years. He's coming back with the mittens as the gifts, and like she says, you're not taking any blame or responsibility for the fact that it went wrong. Your heist, the heist should not have gone through to begin with. That is not a respectable profession. She is
right. And he's sort of a classic like deadbeat dad who's like trying to be better for his daughter archetype of a movie. But Forge, he's a con man. He's not trustworthy, obviously. And also the sponsor of this quest was a sorceress named Sophia, who we find out later, twist, is actually part of the Red Sorcerers of Thay, which is sort of who Edgin had a beef with, if you remember from the beginning. So it all kind of comes around that they're, had this whole plan. And like you said, now Forge is the Lord of Neverwinter under sort of mysterious circumstances. And basically he kind of double crosses them and takes them.
You're wanted. You guys escaped prison, Yeah, it's no good.
So he's lying to his daughter. He says, take him away. They're about to be executed. And we see another great dynamic of this relationship where they jump the people that are about to kill him, but Holga is just kicking ass, fighting everybody. Meanwhile,
Holga gains some loot. She gets through this fight. She gets a new 2-handed battle axe or something, basically. And it's like, let's level up our characters.
Paraffin wax. What was it she was saying?
Flaxseed oil. Boiled oil.
Yeah, she's asking
trying to
about
buy
how does he
time.
clean the weapon before he kills her. And he's like, I'm about to like chop your head off, right? And then later when she has the axe, she's like, we need to get some. And Egan's like, linseed oil. I know.
I heard you. I know.
but this also is like a D&D thing where it's like I can see somebody saying, I'm gonna try to grab a brick and fight them. Okay, roll, and then I'm gonna try to get my ropes off with the steps. And like Edgin definitely rolls a 1 and she rolls a 20. Because she just destroys everybody, and he's just having the hardest time with the rope.
Edgin's doing it on the rock when there's a sword next to him, and then it cuts back to him, and he's doing it on the sword, and it's still not working.
He's trying to cut his ropes the entire time. She's kicking everyone's ass. It cuts to him occasionally. He's like, "We're really got him on the ropes now. We're getting them."
And can we talk about fighting style? Because again, it turns out I'm in love with Michelle Rodriguez in this movie. What they choose to do is, she does wrestling moves. Her combat against fool soldiers is, I will punch them faceplate down. And you're like, okay, I will do a 619 at one point, or like a running lariat. And you're like, this is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And again, grappling is an action you can take in combat.
Right.
So when she's suplexing fools, like you could just, can I pick him up and throw him? Yeah, strength check. Let's go.
She kind of has an archetype that she plays a lot, which is like the badass chick that's like, a tough chick that's good at fighting, and that's her role that she plays really well in Fast and Furious.
The Letty of it all is interesting, Jacob, because I recently watched her. I wonder if it is her breakthrough, but Mike, I recently rewatched the first Resident Evil, where it's basically top billing as Mila Jovovich and her, right? And it's gun combat, and it's early 2000s. I mean, it doesn't look great, but she is standing out with the choreography. And Letty is a character. It's like, what does Letty do in the Fast and Furious franchises? She just kind of frowns at you and just kind of like accelerates or like, turns hard as she's doing it.
Yep.
I gotta say, the sort of like absent-mindedness but presence that she has in this, where she's like, I told you it was a deer, or like, I told you it was this thing. And she sort of just like pushes her opinion forward while being wrong, while being very sweet and sincere.
Yeah.
Fucking loved her. I don't know why.
Another side of her
very different.
When she goes to see her ex-husband and everything.
Yes.
A more kind of deeper character than it first is presented. And
then Michelle Rodriguez ever gets to play. She doesn't get lines like this in Avatar.
Yeah.
No, I think really this is probably my favorite role of hers. Like physically, she's crushing it, and then she does have more of an emotional arc, and it's just like really cool. Like her and Chris Pine are a great like lead duo for this.
Yeah, and she's also she's like a surrogate mom to Edgin's daughter, and
No
essentially
romantic
raised her.
strings. It's a
No,
And
it's
again-
non-traditional
not cured
family
her.
unit.
It's
It's
my
great.
bug, my little love bug. Hey, bug, how are you,
Yeah.
bug?
And not to
Yeah.
jump ahead too much, but the whole emotional climax of this movie revolves around her character. Right?
Yes, their relationship specifically.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
incredible. So that's we get our big escape, right? It's actually, okay, you got out of the city, great. Catch you next week, and now it becomes we need more help. We're gonna go
We
try to
should team
find.
up.
Yeah, we just go get some buddies. We'll see if our sorcerer's still around. So that's step one, and step two is they find another party member. But let's go step one here. What's our sorcerer's name again? I forget.
Is it Aaron Elfric? What is it?
Something.
We'll look it up. So let's
Yeah.
start the story of
Justice
the sorcerer
Smith.
discovery.
Detective Pikachu.
Yeah, Justice Smith,
his
a
biggest
guy who I said to Jacob once we got out of it, I was like, I tolerate him in movies that I like but don't love, like
Yeah.
Detective Pikachu, where I'm like, I'm not sure this is the guy who should be walking around with Detective Pikachu, but
An
he does an
American
okay
guy
job.
doing a British accent, which we usually have the reverse of British people playing
Mm-hmm.
Americans.
Almost like you're at the table doing a bad character accent,
Oh,
right,
yeah.
Jacob? I almost wonder if that's what they're going for. And of course, I'll be the sorcerer. And you're like, oh, Dave, you're going to do that the whole time?
Yeah.
Now that you mention
you're
it,
right.
him and the next character we're going to introduce, it does feel like, are they the nerdy ones at the table? And he kind of had a crush on
Yes.
her, and it's a whole thing.
Absolutely.
Yes,
But that's great.
100%.
I never thought
And
about
his whole
that.
character arc is he
Simon, by the
doesn't
way.
have confidence
Simon.
in himself. Simon, he doesn't have self-confidence. He's not a very good sorcerer, but he actually might be a good sorcerer if he just believed in himself a little bit. And that's kind of his main arc.
Correct. And so sorcerer is different from wizard. Wizards read books. Sorcerers just kind of feel it out in the D&D world.
Yes.
A wizard has to study and have an intelligence stat. Sorcerers don't run the intelligence stat. It's wisdom, I believe. So
Right.
Who has to prepare daily?
wizards.
Wizards. A
They use
sorcerer,
scrolls
he is
and things, yeah.
wild magic sorcerer, we should say. So he is drawing on the
He's like
natural
tapping into the
course of it as
conduit
well.
of
Yes.
magic. Yeah, so it's
That's
a little
very
more
cool.
volatile. And,
And then-
so we meet him, and what's he up to?
Well,
Meet him
he's-
again.
Yeah, he's sort of doing magic for people as like a show, but he's also using his magic to pickpocket them at the same time while distracting them with his magic, doing, thievery and whatnot.
But what do you think of the
Crowd turns
spells
on
he's
him.
doing? Do you recognize any of these, Colin? Does any of this stand out to you?
The smell like grass, what is when he
That's
makes himself
prestidigitation,
blurry?
I believe. You can make something
Okay.
smell or appear. You can create light, and then there's a spell called blur. These are all just shitty cantrips that a level 0 character can do.
Right.
Yeah.
Just really bad cantrips.
He later says, I could use telekinesis to get you over, but it's too far. He's using telekinesis to rob everyone, you would imagine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so he's just doing
later
this
he has
low-level
a-
stuff. Yeah, to
Yes.
distract.
Magic portal gun.
Yes.
cool. But he's
Um,
robbing these folks, and Holga
Yeah.
and Edgin show up like, hey, buddy. And he gets distracted, drops all the loot on the ground, and we get this fun action scene.
Oh.
I thought it was really
Yeah.
fun. What do you think about all the villagers turning on him? And
Yeah,
Oh, I
hijinks
love
ensue.
the gravity thing's awesome. He comes to the party, of course, for avarice, which you have to give everybody these individual. Well, I'm saving my daughter. Well, I'm getting our stuff back.
that's your
Well,
motivation.
I'm broke. It's
Mhm.
like that is fun enough. That is all I
Right.
need to get this guy in the crew.
And that's D&D. Why are we all working together? I don't know. It's a good enough excuse. I need money. I'll go with you guys to do your thing, But, yeah.
And he ran with him back in the day. But they meet up and they start planning, and they realize that they really need is a wild shape or a druid, right?
Mhm.
Someone who can change into animals. He's like, I know a druid. And it's someone, like you said, he has a crush on. And we meet our next member of our party. Is she a half tiefling?
She's a tiefling. She's
I
a
thought
She
raised-
she
raised by
says
humans or something?
she
Raised
says
by
she's
wood elves.
a rare
okay.
tiefling born to humans, raised by wood elves, is what she is described as. And I found that backstory to be like, and I'm playing it where I'm not red, and at the table you're just like, okay.
Yeah. Could I follow this up? Because I've played tieflings before, and they can be any color, generally red. But
Sure.
I like that you can have a random occurrence where if your family had intersected with infernal bloodline, even if they're just two normal-looking parents, if that's in your bloodline, a tiefling could happen. So she gets
Right, or you could have,
abandoned,
like, a-
common backstory, and then
You got
adopted by wood
Rumpelstiltskin.
elves. And then I have no parents, and I'm adopted by wood elves. Here we go.
Right. Or you could be like a tribe of wood elves that
It has
intermingled
tails or
with
something.
monkeys and has tails or something.
You know what? That's
But,
the closest thing we're going to get because she does have a tail. That's
I don't
pretty
know that I'd
henchstyle.
let that if I was the DM.
Yeah.
She has tiefling horns and a tail, but she has like human colored
Yes.
skin.
Mhm.
And she's played by Sophia Lillis, who
Yes.
was
The It Girl?
Beverly in the It movies.
We know from the It chapter films. She's great. She's not, I would say, given the most to do out of the entire party here, but she gets a lot of the visually stunning, very interesting stuff.
And she's motivated. Yeah. She's motivated because since Forge took over, he's deforesting in the name of industry, their little area. So there's some friction there, and she wants to put a stop to that.
She's part of the Emerald Enclave. Yes.
Yes.
I love that you pick these
real.
things up too. These are great. I would have to imagine, Mike.
I would say you're right. She doesn't have the most to do as a character, but she does get a lot of cool scenes of doing her druid ability, changing from animal to animal and doing a lot
of part where I kind of really knew we were in trouble was much later, and we will talk about this, but during the attunement when Simon has to lean over to her and be like, oh, that's Ed's backstory. And then later she's like, well, what's that part? He's like, that's also Ed's backstory. Where I'm like, we should have had scenes like talking about this way beforehand. But again, totally fine. I like everything that's going on.
And I think by the end of the movie, every character does have at least one moment. And when you're doing a D&D session as a DM, you want to create opportunities to let your characters use their powers and really shine, and you want to create that moment. I think they at least do it enough here.
When it makes sense why, they needed a druid, so they hire her kind of to go in with their plan because they need her abilities. And
she's found out immediately in this very cool sequence. Sorry to interrupt what you're about to set up. I want to set up this awesome sequence of our
Session
sorcerer
4, Neverwinter
Sophia,
2. Yeah,
that's right. Yes, the actual red wizard that she is has set up this magical vault by Morgan Kanan, as Mike mentioned earlier. That's going to be part of these huge games, these sort of Olympic Coliseum style games later. That's going to house a ton of treasure. That's the big heist that this entire film is set around. Now, she is noticed immediately because you would have to imagine that Sophia has detect magic or just rolled some incredible observation skill.
Yeah.
And we get this, Beast Boy-esque, like this scene that I would love to see in a superhero movie or something, where just this endless animal wild shape changing that I just thought was awesome.
Yeah, the really pseudo one take is one of my favorite moments in the movie. So yeah, Jacob, you can kind of describe it, but I love this because she gets discovered by Sophia. She's being a fly, getting in there.
Disguised as a fly.
She learns where the vault is and that it's locked up. Right.
Yeah, to different animals to end up as a deer, and that also pays off another joke from earlier that Holga had. And even her introduction, she turns into an owlbear, which is an awesome scene.
Yeah, see that in the trailer. I didn't know the owlbear would be like one of our characters. I didn't watch a ton of trailers, but
they played that clip so often of Simon just saying, and that's an owlbear, that I was like, oh, I'm so sick of this. And then when you realize what it is, I'm like, oh, I love this.
And that's a classic D&D creature for the folks at home. Owlbears, man, I use them in my campaign actually all the time, so they're great.
Hell yeah. And we should also mention Simon is a half-elf sorcerer.
Sure.
Gotcha. Yeah.
He's got the pointed ears.
Humans are liars. I'm only half human.
Yeah, and of course he has previously courted Doric. Is that her name?
Doric. Yeah.
And
Dorit.
He's like, so he is into her. She's not as into him as he is into her, but over time might start to have some feelings for him. So we do get our relationship arc in the movie with them, kind of.
Yeah, and I want to also underline the reason they're trying to locate where the vault could be is because they assume that that's where the rune of resurrection is, and if they can get that, then they can prove Forge is lying to your daughter. So that's the main thing they want to do.
Yeah, Edgin wants to save his daughter, and B, get the rune of resurrection back again to resurrect his dead wife.
And he can prove he's not a liar if he has the rune of resurrection to say, here it is, receipts. It's not a rune of money. He's lying to you, right? So it helps him both ways. So now they know to break Mordenkainen's seal, because that's big magic. Simon knows this. He's familiar with Mordenkainen. They're going to need the helmet of destruction or something like that. Disjunction. And they pronounce it wrong in the movie, and that's a joke that I was doing on purpose. So now we got to get the helmet of disjunction. And this is kind of session 5 But before that, we
Right.
got to do a one-off where we go visit Holga's ex-husband because we're kind of heading to the graveyard where her
Yes.
ancestors
Now,
fought. It's
Mike,
on the way. Yeah.
at this point, like, again, like, it's just, I'm just so happy about this movie.
I'm so happy about
Like-
it at this point, too. I'm
like,
all in. I am all in right now.
I don't need name drops. I don't need references. When they said Baldur's Gate, hey, we'll go down, we'll charter a ship by Baldur's Gate. Jake and I turn to each other, our jaws drop. Okay, that's fine. I'm excited. It's just something I didn't consider.
Yeah.
Now, certainly what I didn't consider is that there would be like a weird cameo in this movie. And this was the next jaw drop turn to Jacob. Now, what did you think of Holga's ex fiance?
I love everything about this. You know how I feel about, Mary and Awen.
Oh yes.
You know, short king, tall queen, bro. I'm very for it.
Sure,
And
of
so we're revealed that her husband is a halfling, which is their version of a
halfling.
hobbit because they would get
Yeah.
sued. So it's Bradley
Little
Cooper is a
short
little
guy.
halfling.
Yeah,
And that's her
Bradley
ex-husband.
Cooper.
The
That's
cutest
what's so
little
funny.
guy.
It's like 2 reveals. So it's like not
Uh-huh.
only do we find out that she's married to a halfling as a large barbarian woman, we also find out that it's Bradley Cooper.
But it should be an A-list star. Like, you can imagine them setting up this joke. You know, Holga, she's huge. She's a barbarian. It's going to be so funny that it's halfling. But what if it was also a huge star? And to get Bradley
Yeah.
Cooper and to not spoil that or blow it, I was really shocked.
Yeah.
It's the classic death by snoo snoo Amazonian woman.
Right.
With a
In
Right.
my
short king.
dreams. In my goddamn dreams.
Resident
And
Evil
then it gets
Village.
even better when they're divorced or whatever, or he left her because she was sort of too preoccupied on her tribe, basically
Feeling the loss of her tribe,
outcasting
even though
her,
she chose him.
for marrying him. So then we find out that he has a new wife, and then she comes in, and it's another large barbarian woman, and it's just a very funny scene.
Yeah, and she's like, "Oh, how you doing? How long you staying? Oh, just passing through." It's this very awkward, like
watch it.
ex-wife, current wife conversation.
Very
with-
modern.
Yeah, it was really cute.
Hilarious.
Yeah, you love to see it. But so he's moved on, and she needs closure, so that's why she wanted to stop by. And he says, "Hey, you can take this walking stick, that's chilling out if you want to take that with you." Which to me, this is a DM being like, there's one player that's like, "I really want to go to my ex-husband's house." Like, okay. Fine, and then they do it for him, but
Use
then they're
that
like, "We
to
need
give them a
something for the
special
quest,
item
so we're gonna
How
put
can
the special
I-
item here."
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for sidetracking us, but also fuck
I
you.
need to get
Now
us
I have
back on
work in
track.
My
It's like a
plot
one shot where you meet
detail.
this NPC.
Yeah,
I'm still working on my garden, and my book's coming along. I was like, you know what? If I was in the D&D world, I'd probably just live how Bradley Cooper would, where I'd just be like a little guy, just like running around,
yeah. Wouldn't you want to always be the Hobbit archetype and just be a little guy running around, hanging out? Yeah.
smoking and drinking.
I read about how they shot the scene. It's a little disappointing because
Oh,
they shot Bradley Cooper's scenes after and added it in with, so him and Michelle Rodriguez aren't even acting against
Sure.
each other in the scene.
Of course.
But it works well enough.
it still works, but that's a
Yeah.
bummer. But
Yeah.
you like get him on sitting on a normal sized chair, and it's
Ooh.
very funny.
Who is he friends with? What would make it Bradley Cooper? That's what I can't piece together.
I don't know.
There's got to be some game night connection, or just somebody really likes.
I
Yeah.
just really likes
in the
D&D
shallow.
and wanted to do a cameo.
Shallows.
So
And some
I guess
A-list actors like to do these cameos because they kind of get talked about as like, oh, I didn't expect Tom Cruise to
Yeah,
pop up in
that's
Tropic
so
Thunder.
exciting. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're totally
Yeah.
right.
But I think that's kind of the midpoint of our whole arc here. So let's take a quick break, and we'll come back. We'll be leaving and heading to the next session here as we try to begin the quest to get the helmet of, what is it, Jacob?
Disjunction.
Disjunction. Right after this.
We're back here on Normies Like Us, where we have been having a ball, playing it all here, talking Dungeons and Dragons, honor Among Thieves on Normies Like Us. We just left Holga's house where she picked
Yes.
up this magic walking stick, but of course we were headed towards a very big site for her tribe, a battleground where her people 100 years prior had fought against the dragon cult, or the cult of the dragon.
Yeah, and we get Simon says, "Oh, nice." He says, "I have a coin that we can talk to dead people. They need to figure
So
out where the
looking for this
helmet
helmet.
is. It was last
Yeah.
seen in this battle. So we're gonna resurrect
So this
some guys."
coin-
Yeah, go ahead, Jacob.
You can resurrect them. You ask them 5 questions, and then they die again forever. And this sets up one of the funniest scenes in the movie.
Mhm.
Everyone in the theater was like cracking up, and I saw some of this
Dying.
in the trailer, and I knew it was gonna be funny, but it was even more extended than I thought because it wasn't just one guy that they showed in the trailer, but it was a really hilarious scene, I thought.
Yeah, and this to me highlights we've had, combat sequences, right? We've had what I would consider a skill check sequence with the escape of the druid. Like you just have to keep rolling correctly on your transform to escape this pursuit. And now we just have a strictly role-playing session where you're going to investigate with these guys and chat with them, and it's just the players kind of doing a role-playing, all talking, and then they learn backstory. And it's so great. It's another aspect of D&D being represented here.
Yes, we're not doing reflex here, Mike. It's just the charisma. It's just the talking. Yeah,
Wait, did you ask
Jacob,
him a
like
question?
you're
He's
saying.
just answering, like, yeah.
But the semantics of, you can just imagine the directors going through, give me every magic item that has something that's like within 100 feet, or like, only on the color blue, like things that have little rules. So something that's like, and you only have 5 questions. And then for them to point out, like, well, that's so arbitrary. Why would it be 5 questions?
Yeah.
The
Kinda
comedy,
arbitrary.
again, is coming from such a natural starting point.
Yeah.
Because it is like, yeah, why is this the hard rule of 5? And, it's like, I don't know. I didn't make the magic coin, but like players ask that to kind of.
Yeah.
If
But other
you
than
guys
that's
were
great.
playing a session, Jacob, and like, even if you dug up the corpse you needed to talk to, but you were on a battlefield full of bodies and you had a magic item that spoke to the dead, wouldn't you be like, all right, well, I'm going to ask like a bunch of people what's going on? And the DM will be like, I don't know. All right, well, you asked this guy. How'd he die?
Right.
He fell and hit his neck on a bathtub. Really? It's like, yeah,
They
that's
kinda
not
have to
this one.
piece
I'm just
together-
making this up as I go. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all, yeah.
Yeah, they're piecing together the story of what happened to this helmet. It gets passed from one person to the next, so they have to like figure out where it went next. And I also think this is a great scene for Chris Pine to really stretch his comedy chops, because I think Chris Pine, my favorite of the Hollywood Chris's,
Yes.
love
I
him as
think right now stock is
Captain
rising.
Kirk. And I think he's
Ugh.
a natural comedian in sort of like a leading man's body. And you get these people sometimes where they're naturally good comedic actors, but they sort of get typecast as a traditional leading man because they're also very good looking. But Chris Pine's a very funny actor, I think, and he's really getting to like, do his thing here in this scene. And some of them he only asked them like 3 questions. And they're like, you still have 2 questions left. And he's like, what's your favorite book? And the guy's
Oh,
like,
there's so many. I
there's so
could.
many.
Hard
How
to
can I
think of
choose?"
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they just decide.
What's
how
your
we're gonna
favorite
walk
food? The guy who goes oats. No, barley. he doesn't trust himself for a minute and then immediately dies.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they leave,
So
and there's
she's
a
very
bit
funny
where they're
scene.
like, "Can somebody ask me one more question?" That's funny.
That
But
was
we
5,
do,
right?
Yeah. we do find out where the helmet finally went. Apparently, this paladin, who was of the Red Wizard, or his race got taken over by the Red Wizards, and that made a little bit of beef for Chris Pratt. We find out there's a paladin who has it, and he's pretty famous. Everybody in the group had kind of heard of him. They're like, yeah, this is a real famous guy. So this is
Zank Yendar.
session.
Zank
right?
Yendar.
Yep.
Sounds
we
like some Star Wars name, but
It does.
Boy, we're getting into that territory, Jacob. But we've gotten a couple scenes now, Mike, where Sophia has been alone back at the castle, revealing the red wizardness of it all. But we
Yeah.
also get this shadow necromancer who is dead, who is revealed to be the big bad pulling the strings. What is this? What's going on
that's
here?
the,
Not
that's
my
the grand
favorite.
wizard of the
Okay.
Red Wizards or whatever. But
So
Sophia,
he's a
the
named
sorcerer,
character in
yes.
the lore.
Yeah.
And he's a archlich. Like he's a badass. Or,
Yes.
so anyway.
Like the
So we
highest
see-
necromancer position you can get, essentially. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, and we kind of see the plan here is that Sophia, who is disguising herself as a normal sorcerer wearing black clothes or whatever, but is really a red sorcerer, which in this world apparently everyone hates because they're just really bad people. Killed Edgin's wife, obviously. So she's got this ulterior motive. That's why she sort of guided Forge to become the Lord of Neverwinter. He's sort of an oblivious person in all this, but he's kind of a stooge for their ultimate
As long
plan.
as he's being admired, he's happy. And we
Yeah.
meet this paladin. We finally track him down. And this is very much like great paladin trope, a great NPC. But before we talk about his personality, we get the kind of the backstory of why the Red Wizards are so feared, because they attack his
Yes.
people and they use this certain spell that'll turn a whole group of people, anybody within range, into a zombie
Undead.
servant.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
love to know what political metaphor we're doing here, because they were
Red
good
pill.
people living in a country that was ruled by a council of 5 necromancers and their guards, like 20 red wizards. And he, the main one, who, what is this guy's name? It's like Cal.
I forget.
It's like, or it's like Zor Zandal. Like they
Yeah.
say it like 10 times.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
And
proper
he
nouns.
goes like, fuck
He does
you
a coup
guys,
on
I'm
the
the
other red
head
wizards.
necromancer, and grabs
Yeah.
this magic horn thing and goes up and does a spell that converts human live bodies into zombie soldiers. So literally you want to do it at the highest population possible. And if you are a necromancer, you now have undead thralls under your control.
And
An
meanwhile,
infinite
we're
number.
hearing about Forge restarting these games. What are they called? The something games?
The High Sun
Um,
Games.
High Sun Games,
Yes.
which is
Sure.
a big thing that's going to take place in a stadium with a huge audience at Neverwinter, this city. So
that's the whole
castle.
plot. She makes him rich, makes him the ruler. He gets to flee with all the loot, and then she gets to have an army of
gets a
undead
bunch of
soldiers, and he gets to
undead
dip
soldiers.
out. Absolutely. So the paladin
We meet
explains
this
this,
paladin.
and he says, hey, so this is bad news. I guess I'll help you get the helmet if it can stop them because they fucked with me. But let's talk about this guy because he's a paladin.
Yes.
And he's an NPC paladin. He's incredible.
I
He
wonder
must be.
about that, Mike.
Okay,
He must be. I would agree with you.
Said something good about this. Yeah.
He is the overpowered stand-in for the DM who's like, these people are fucking up. Here's like
I
somebody
must
to,
give
like-
them
Yes.
background.
I like what you said also, Colin, yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah.
My other theory, Mike, is he's the guy who really did want to play, comes in for one incredible session, and then his wife never
busy
lets
or
him come again.
Yeah.
Right.
He never comes again.
There's a couple good tropes because there's also the paladin players that like they're very powerful because it's a powerful class, but they'll be so moral. They're like, I will not do thievery, and they'll just like always try to not go with the flow, and it makes like so the fact that he just leaves is very funny. At that point, but yeah, he's either the guy who could never come back, and we had to write him off, and he just walked away. Yeah. And it's like okay, and that was that.
He just kept walking away. In fact,
and this is the
cons-
Underdark arc essentially. So yeah, go ahead.
Yes. The moral alignment constraints of this game, Mike, that's so interesting for you to bring up because the terms lawful good are, it's like being a Trump supporter. And I'm not trying to trigger, and please do not flame us for me saying this, but we're being dogmatic about anything where you go, no, I can't because I'm the lawful status. I'm this way. And you can be lawful evil. You can be, chaotic, all these things, blah, blah, blah. It's so hard to get a group that does have a spectrum of players. You want that as a DM, but honestly, it kind of does end up becoming the honor among thieves or the murder hobo route where it's like, we're all in this together. And yeah, I do different things, but like, I'm with you, whatever you say, fuck everybody else. Let's do these things. It is fun to have a character that is so different, who's literally like, I don't make jokes. I don't make jokes at all, in fact.
Yeah.
And
he's a very funny personality. And he has his own motivations where I think we mentioned this a little bit, but he was a kid during this coup of the Red Wizards. So he escaped this red smoke that turned everyone into zombies. So he has this big grudge against them.
And then became a paladin because of that, right?
But then he gets this sort of headmark tattoo. What is that?
Yeah.
That is a curse?
I'm not sure.
All the people who get converted get those head scars. And so he was touched by the magic but escaped it. So it's just a reminder. And this is also like a classic backstory. The wizards killed my whole family and my clan, and I found a paladin to train me, and I will fight against the red wizards. It's a very like classic, backstory that people come up with
this helmet.
He hid it in the Underdark.
He agrees to help this party, but only, again, with his moral good stance, only if they split the loot among the townspeople instead of taking all the loot that's in the
what
vault, right?
Amazing foreshadowing we're getting here. So, of course, he's even saying, you may not believe this, but I trust that your quest will bring you this way. Now, I want to point out, Jacob, real quick. He's making Ed take this oath on the Harper's
book or whatever
rules or whatever,
Harper's,
which is again, he is also using to show us images of these are the Red Wizards. It's how you're finding out information and stuff. Mike, is this a player's handbook? Is he literally giving the players a player's handbook to constantly reference throughout this movie?
You know what? Yeah, that's pretty great because it's like it shows you, hey, here's the Red Wizard. Here's everything about why they're a threat. Here's another nefarious group. Here's why they're a threat. Like the Harpers would just keep track of that, and it's wonderful. I didn't think about that.
And Ed had this manual in the beginning, but he rejected the Harpers because his wife died, and he kind of blamed them. He was like, "Fuck this! I'm gonna do my own thing." And so now the Paladin is saying, like, come back to the good side and like kind of take your oath and commitment to being a good person and stuff. So I like that too.
And I like
when we're getting this good runner of Chris Pine handing things to people opposed to holding them, which I think is very funny. It's like, okay, hold on.
The Paladin's
so... Oh, here, Simon, take this.
He's just so funny and stoic. Yeah, exactly. I'll protect this with my life. Hold this. But I love how stoic the Paladin is. He never gets a joke. He's very almost Drax, but it's like,
a lot like
you
Drax,
may not believe those words.
A lot like Drax. A lot like Knuckles.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember Knuckles from 2?
Sure. Yeah. Doesn't understand metaphors, doesn't understand
We have
irony.
these tropes where someone will make a joke where the joke is, I don't even understand what you're doing is making a joke. I think he's at his weakest when he's like that. When they're headed to the Underdark, or maybe they've already jumped into it, and they're saying, you can't hear us, and they're whispering and he still hears them and stuff, and then he hears that he hates them and he smiles. That's good. That is good character stuff. That's original and isn't just playing into the sort of autistic coded. I mean, I hate to go that far, but there is this sort of weird trope that's popping up with these characters.
Well, I don't know. He's so committed to his quest.
He's just so self-serious, right? And I think that's why I feel
no
like
social skills.
This is an NPC because he's like
guy who's really good at everything. Like the women
he
all love
saves that kitten from the fish, Mike, and the Catwoman's just there crying, and he pulls this kitten.
Yeah, I forgot there's Tabaxi in this. But yeah, that's why I feel that NPC vibe is like, because it's like the DM like, this guy's way too powerful to roll with you for the rest of the thing. Yeah. And I need to do everything I can to make him not be your friend. He's going to be short with you and direct, and he's going to leave when he can.
Comes in and is like so purely good that the other characters are like kind of turned off by just how good he is. And
it's like the town wizard. Like he could probably destroy anything you meet in wild. Why can't you bring this level 20 NPC with you? You have to have an excuse, right?
And he has this rivalry with Ed that is great because from the look of how Ed looked with the Harpers, you almost get the feeling that he was on the track to be a paladin, right? Or that he could have had these abilities, but instead we have this much nobler, much better person.
I just got something.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say real quick, just to throw another Guardians reference, it reminded me of in Avengers when you have the Star-Lord Thor dynamic where Thor comes in and everyone's like, look at this guy. And Star-Lord's like very self-conscious.
Not that cool.
That's I feel like that's Ed in this paladin that I'm
absolutely right.
Zen, whatever his name is.
Zenk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is also a Bridgerton guy, handsome Bridgerton guy, kind of got him over.
Bridgerton guy.
Regé-Jean Page, who's just blown up. Good for him. He was great in this movie.
Bridgerton. Like you said, he kind of left after one season because he's like, fuck this, I'm going to be a movie star, and has since sort of maybe not found the right role before now because he was kind of a standout in his limited scenes in this, but he was trying to break into the sort of A-list of movie stars, I feel like.
Right.
Did you see The Gray Man, Mike? He was a character in that.
No.
He was the villain or one of the villains of.
Gotcha.
The villain of that film is actually the CIA, or I'm sorry, Harvard is what they tell you at the end of the film because every member of CIA went to Harvard and they talk about it frequently.
Sheesh. Okay. Well, this guy went to whatever paladin school he went to. And I do want to say, we all know paladins, they have the ability to detect good and evil, right? He uses one of those, but maybe in that moment when he says, you might not believe that you'll give the treasure away, but I do, because he's detecting good in Edgin, because that's a power paladins have. So Underdark, we go.
He goes to the Underdark. We pass this intellective hour. It's great. We get more of this stuff. Yep. I also want to point out a lot of the action has been in the daylight before this, and one of you pointed out 1 million locations, which is so interesting and fascinating. The Underdark, for being called the Underdark, is another series of scenes and locations in this film that are really well lit, where you can see good action, and it's not dark, and it doesn't look like Wakanda or the Talcoons.
That's a really good point.
We've been having an issue with
a
that.
lot of modern stuff that's shot very
It's
darkly
called
for
The
some reason.
Underdark, Jacob, and it's
Yeah.
not underlit.
It's a movie
Yeah.
where you can see everything that's happening. What a concept, right?
And if it gets too dark, you can hold his hand, but I'm not going to do that.
I'm not going to hold
Then
your
he
hand,
does.
I'm not gonna
He
hold
does
his
at one
hand.
point.
and then
That
he
pays
takes
off.
it. That's
Uh-huh.
right. It's good. It's all
But we
good.
get this
But
is one of my
where the
favorite.
magic portal gun comes
Well,
into
yeah.
play, right? Yeah.
Primarily, though, yeah, this is one of my favorite sequences too, because the paladin, as a either NPC stand-in or whatever DM running him, he's like, "Here is the puzzle. It's an ancient gnomish thing. You got to do 17 different steps: 2 steps forward, 1 lateral step to the left or right." And then we switch to even odd numbers.
Odd numbers.
Do not
Equal
engage the
numbers.
trap before he's doing this whole spiel. And then Simon accidentally steps on one of the pressure plates, and the whole bridge just
The whole
immediately
bridge just
collapses.
And he says, I didn't know the bridge started
may
back
have-
here.
Like technically
Yeah.
that was the
It's
start of the
like,
bridge.
Really, it is the border, yeah.
But then he redeems himself by
Right.
using this
Yes.
magic portal gun, which is essentially what it is, where it has the same effect as a portal gun from the game Portal.
Which is super cool.
Yeah.
And that's a
Very
real item,
cool.
the hither
Well,
hither staff.
I want to point out first what happens before that is
Mhm.
you get Dungeons and Dragons playing, which is the puzzle went off, the DM's pissed, exactly how Mike said. Oh,
Mhm.
you're not going to do it how I'm going to do it. What are you going to do? Holga just starts saying, I've got rope in my bag. I could tie the rope to my axe and I'll throw it and I'll go. And that's when Simon sees and they come up with another plan. It's conversation. It's the group sort of like feeling out what they have and what they own and what they could use to get out of a situation.
Also, shout out having a rope in your adventuring bag because, like, you
Yes.
must always
Gotta have
have
a rope.
one.
You always get 10 feet of rope, Mike.
You have
Buy
to do
the
it.
adventurers pack when you start, people. You always get 10 feet of rope.
You may need to climb across a cliff or descend to something. You want that rope. It comes in handy. So the fact that they brought that up was like perfect D&D stuff. Yeah.
But they use this magic portal gun, end up
Hither, thither
fighting
staff.
some undead people. The hither thither staff. That's what it's called. Very funny
Hither,
name.
thither.
And then they end up
retrieve
kind
the
of running
helmet.
from some undead people that are the wizards, thralls
Henchmen.
or whatever, the undead.
Does Holga say she found his walking stick by the corpse of a wizard? Is that what she said? She's like, yeah, I found it,
Could
by
be,
a
yeah.
magician's dead body.
I need to watch this movie again. That would be incredible.
And again, here we have another great action scene where we see this paladin in sort of command where he's just fucking up these undead people.
It's a pretty good fight, I think, overall.
Yeah, he's got like a sword that like shoots out its blade and then
It's so cool.
has a smaller
And
blade inside of it. Yeah.
I had a big complaint afterwards about the role of the bard and that it's very cool to make the lead of this film a bard, but the bard role, I would like to see bardic magic be part of that. Yes, Mike, you were saying maybe he is inspiring,
Using inspiration
subconsciously,
or charm
whatever.
person, but
Yes.
no.
Maybe. The paladin, this is action where you see him whispering on his blade while he's rubbering it, and it like gains like,
It's like a thundering
ability
smite.
boosts, and it gains
Yeah.
like extra attributes and stuff. Like it's exactly how a paladin would play in the game. He's getting bonuses, he's like using abilities and spells. It's fucking
He's
awesome.
buffing his own sword for him because
He's
he's OP.
buffing.
Yeah, it's great. I just wanted a
I
shield
think,
bash because he carried a shield in one scene, but he didn't use it in this fight.
right.
But
Gives
otherwise,
it up immediately.
yeah. But
I
good
think
fight.
Ed might be like multi-class. He's like a
He,
bard, a rogue.
he
or something.
might be a guy who literally has a level at everything. You might be right, Jacob.
The best take on the internet, it's always one or the other. Multi-class has
Yeah.
not come up. You heard it here
Mhm.
first.
It's like, why do you have one level of fighter? He's like, because I'm gonna bash somebody with my loot. And they're like, well,
Yeah.
yeah, but why would you do that?
I guess that makes sense as a spy that his cover is a musician that like plays for coins and stuff. Like it makes sense that he would have other skills other than just barding, right?
Yeah, because he's clearly got some deception. But anyway, we
Yeah.
were having a fight with the undead. They're all dead, and then it's like we got to get out of here because they're undead. They're going to keep coming
Can't
back,
kill
and they're
them.
trying to
Yeah.
escape when we get another big reveal
And
from the
then-
trailer.
Yeah. And then
Fat
we
Smog.
get a big fight with like you said, a fat smog, right?
Big
Well, I'll be
chase.
honest with you guys.
Big
I don't know
fat
if you
dragon.
picked up on this, but they happen to be at this moment in a dungeon fighting a dragon.
Oh shoot! Amongst
This is the
and is there
dragon
honor
side
among
of
the
the
thieves?
Yeah.
I believe there is.
There was honor among the thieves as well.
Yes. But yeah, so we get and we had the black dragon earlier shooting its rock breath, very cool. But we get a red dragon, notoriously aggressive. They always protect their horde. You don't want to tussle with a red dragon because that'll be usually first to strike. So he comes out of his lair and we get a big chase that I think is pretty exciting too, all things considered. on twists and turns, a little bit of Moria action, a little tipsy-turvy. Paladin
It's a lot
saves
like The
Edgin.
Hobbit,
They become
right?
homies.
Where,
Yeah.
It's so
the
funny that you
dwarves are
say that.
running from Smaug.
Halfway through, I was
Correct.
like, you know what? I'm thinking about Smaug right now, but I'm loving this so much more than anything those movies ever got me close. Literally in theaters, I was thinking that to myself during it.
I think that
the
is
twist,
better
of
than
course, is that
The
he's
Hobbit.
like
He's
an
a
overweight
big
dragon.
boy.
Yeah.
he's been eating too much.
But that's a named dragon in the lore. It's like Thelos Umdrum or something. You know, it's a real character that exists. And they don't kill it off. They get away, but like it still exists down there. So, you know, that's
But
cool.
it's like so powerful that even they can't kill it.
No.
And dragons will fuck you up at like mid to
So
low
they try
level,
to
which I
escape.
assume they are.
They get out, and then this is when the paladin's like, and this is where I leave you. And he just leaves the party, walking in a straight line.
It's so good.
And they're just quipping the whole time. Oh,
Look at him.
Is he just going to keep walking in a straight line? Like he's coming up on a
Rocks
rock.
with such purpose. Like he's not even going to move.
He just walks straight up
Of course,
and
they
over
get
it.
the helmet. And of course, before this, Simon the sorcerer is like, I can't, it all depends if I can attune with this helmet, which I don't think I will be able to do. And if I can't, then this whole plan is basically useless.
Yeah, I kind of think this was the weakest moment, Mike, where you kind of get that 8 points of Campbellian's screenwriting, right? Where they're like, okay, we need a Dark Night of the Soul right now. Like, what is their lowest moment? And it's like, well, they all need to bicker with each other. And it's like, why? Well, it's like, well, Ed kind of had a side conversation with Simon that really these other two, like, wouldn't really care that much about because they kind of like know that he doesn't believe in himself or would be able to use this thing. But the reaction is kind of like, I can't believe you would lie to all of us.
Yeah.
Right. But there is the moment where we find out Edgin's true kind of motivation. And that is that during his arrest of a red wizard, that's all fine and good. The reason they were able to, they wanted revenge, obviously, but the reason they were able to find his family is he stole a piece of gold from them that they had marked. And that is a real D&D thing where villains will mark their treasure. DMs will give them a pile of it. And when they spend it at the tavern, boom, minions, because we know where you are.
Oh,
it's like a credit card tracing thing. So his greed caused the death of his family, and it was a selfish motive. He wants to bring his wife back.
I wasn't even lucky enough to be there.
Correct. Yeah. So that's the real thing. And then the family's like, it's all for nothing. We've all fucked up. And, it eventually comes around for me.
But because Edgin believes in Simon more than Simon does, like his whole arc is that he has to find the self-confidence. He puts the helmet on and he has like a vision of his ancestor who's like, you don't deserve to wear this, shoots off of him. So he's got to learn to attune with the helmet so that he can get past the magic seal on the door. But you're right, Colin, this is where this is like the second act. Party breaks down because of distrust. They got to work things out.
Just even if they weren't taking it this hard, I would take the backstory reveals and stuff. And I love the idea that it's like he's basically like, your level's too low to use this epic loot. And it's like, I gotta how do I fucking level up in the world of a real movie? First. Yeah, it's like, I have self-confidence.
Yeah, but that's his bardic inspiration. He's trying to give him an inspiration point,
Yeah.
I guess.
Because even in the end, he's like, I always knew that, you could do it. You just had to believe in yourself. But
that's what I've been saying.
Yeah.
Which, kind of anime, simplistic, I guess. But this leads to, after this, I think, the setup to the finale, which is kind of 3 sequences. I call it infiltration, the game's final confrontation. We just kind of jump into it. But I think for me, we have multiple plans happening. We have a helmet. If that doesn't work, we need plan B. We're going to use this spell thing. We can put it on a piece of loot and we can sneak that into the vault, and then we can use it. Like, it's great.
Yeah, it seems like the helmet's not going to work, so like we need a plan B. Use the portal thing. They end up needing both plans, which is a really interesting thing because they actually end up leading to 2 different places.
And
so
it is
really
we don't know,
very good writing because we've had the entire setup the entire time, Jacob, where we've gotten good lines like, "What do you provide? I provide plans." Okay, you already made the plan. Well, I'm always good at backup plans too. So you make plans that fail. And him constantly saying, I'm good at making multiple plans. So when it occurs to finally go and they're like, oh shit, it's not going to just work one way. We need to think about it from multiple angles, and that they actually engage that way. Like Mike said, it's like one of the most thrilling parts of this movie that is nonstop thrilling parts.
Yeah, from here on, this whole climax is just so
great.
Good. Like, yeah.
Yes, up to a moment at the end that Jacob said was like real, like D&D, where your party is like taking turns fighting together. This whole part to that, I'm just like, this movie is
boss
hitting
fight.
on every level right now.
These hijinks with this portal gun, and we're going to attach it to a painting, and then that'll get loaded in, and then they need to flip it down so they can hammer wood out, and then hammer the wood back. Like the levels of creativity using this portal gun are probably my favorite sequence in the whole movie.
But then
it's
it ends
incredible.
up, when it's in the vault, the painting falls over onto the ground, so now the portal's facing the cement ground. So now
it's a nat one.
Go to Plan D.
Yeah.
Which is Plan D again? Yeah.
Are there any extra consequences to the fact that their group is spotted by one of the members of the parole board, or does that just increase the stakes for Dorrit to go through the hole? That's just kind of so she's like getting chased for a moment,
it puts a ticking time element. Yeah, that's
well, the
all.
one thing I didn't think was paid off was when they're trying to get into the wagon, right? And there's those two guards. Is that what you're talking about, that see what's going on?
No, there's a lady in the tavern who goes up to mess with.
Yeah, later the halfling parolee was like, they're up to no good, but she spots everyone leaves, but the person she's turning in is Dorrit, who wasn't even part of that, which you're like, she doesn't need to be. I understand that, but like, what are the stakes of, like, if she gets caught, she'll just be like, who are you looking for? I'm not part of that crew. What are you talking about?
Become a bug and fly away.
Yeah. It's just kind of so that the scene, so she can say like 1 minute as she's, like doing something stressful, which again, it's like, that's fine.
And a script that has not a ton of artificiality. That's pretty good. I'm fine with it. Yeah.
They find out actually the painting's in a different location than the vault that they thought they were going into, which was where the Tablet of Resurrection is. They see all this loot's being loaded on a ship.
Simon's attuned by this point, we should say.
Yeah,
well, he learns how to be.
Conquered his demons of lack of confidence.
He thought his ancestor was stopping him. Turns out it was just him. He punches his ancestor to reveal it. You were in your own way, buddy. Just believe in yourself, and boom, it took you long enough.
Gets past the seal. So they're in the vault. Dorrit is in this other location where she sees the treasure being loaded on a ship because Forge is going to escape with Kira, Ed's daughter. But of course, everyone gets captured. They end up in this maze. This game,
this labyrinth,
the labyrinth of
which this is such a
or whatever it's called.
This kind of thing reminds, like, Colin, our first session, you put us in a wagon, imprisoned us, and then threw us into a gladiatorial games to fight for sport. And it's like, this is, I'm sure that happens a lot in D&D, and here we go. Perfect end of the first movie.
It's the number one. And you're just watching, you're going like, yeah, this is exactly how you tell a story.
And there's a ton of Easter eggs here, obviously. We get the original D&D party from the animated show as one of the other crews that they're competing against. Tons of creatures. What kind of stuff did you spot that you're familiar with? Yeah.
You see the Displacer beasts, Mike. We're getting this shout out to some beasts where it's like, there are characters who are like, have you ever had Displacer beast meat? No, too gamey for me. But it doesn't feel like they have to pause every second to be like, do you understand that we're showing you this? Do you understand that this? It just feels like a movie that's like, you're in it, like, just keep going.
That's natural, where it's like, oh, this is one of the obstacles they need to run from. And then it actually power to project an image to distract you, right, while the real one sneaks up on you.
And that's what they do. And it's, you don't have Chris.
Just sorry, rewind, because if we're talking about holograms, we have to talk about maybe the funniest sequence.
Minor illusion requires concentration.
Mike, our audience, there was a woman next to me who I thought was going to die. She was laughing so hard, and I was also gasping for breath. But when you see Chris Pines with the most maniac look he's ever had, lock eyes with another person, and then his head starts shrinking into his body, you for a moment are like, oh no, I'm having a stroke.
Yeah.
So essentially,
incredible.
Ed is doing his bard thing, singing a song. It's a reveal that it's actually an illusion of him that Simon the sorcerer is doing, which essentially lags out and just starts, the hologram lags, right?
Because he gets his foot stuck. There's an element of play in D&D that spells require concentration, certain ones.
Yes.
And if your concentration is broken, it starts not to work. So he gets his foot stuck, and because he's not concentrating fully, the illusion starts to crack down, and it's fun that that's a gameplay element that they're bringing into a story element. I just love it. Yeah.
It's so clever.
Well, so unexpected.
Yeah, you're right.
It just had to be mentioned, because when we get the credits for Chris Pine later, they unravel his little mannequin figurine to represent him, and then they start stretching it out, referencing this. It is so good.
Yeah, no, that was a really, really good moment. I'm glad you brought that up. But in this arena, we get, they're not running around saying like, run from the displacer beast. Watch out, it's a displacer beast. Look out for the gelatinous cube. They're just
Right.
they're
It's just
running. They're
things
not
that's happening.
overdoing
Yes.
it. They don't
Yeah.
name any of these things, and we get
You
a
see
mimic chest
as well, yeah,
which is great.
chest.
Finding loot in the maze, you open a chest, like even something like that. You open a chest and get a new sword, like
Get an
that's very
axe,
D&D, So they find ways to give us all this here. I love it.
You see lots of traditional D&D looking characters like dwarves and different things with cool looking armor in the maze, right?
And there's not a lot of dwarves in the Neverwinter region because of politics. So that's why they're not main characters in this particular movie, but he would maybe show up for the games, that kind of thing. So there's a reason it's more of a human-centric area because that's kind of Neverwinter. So it's just interesting how they.
And at this point, Hugh Grant, Forge, is literally like, okie dokie, I think I should. And he just really starts to get out of there. He is giving to Sophia control of whatever they're doing at the city. So you can imagine not good.
Yeah, and
he wants
basically
to just take Kira, which is like his one redeeming thing is that he does actually care about Kira.
That he brings up.
daughter.
He's like, you do have to admit, I do have one good quality.
I am a better father than you are, Edgin.
I have been treating her well, but it is for a crazy reason, and that she makes me feel like a god. And you're like, oh my god.
God. Yeah.
But the game's also attracted all the rich people from all around the realm. So he's like, I'm going to steal all their money. I'll get out. She can do whatever she wants. So, he's being a little scumbag, con artist, but that's what he does. So he's trying to make his getaway. Meanwhile, they're trapped in the maze and time is ticking again.
Yeah. And
we find an escape through the gelatinous cube. We realize that up and down movement.
Chris Pine very correctly says, if we just win this game is not going to stop. We just need to get ourselves out of it. Dorrit says, I have an idea. They run towards the gelatinous cube. Everybody jumps in. Just as the gong goes off, resetting the labyrinth, the gelatinous cube goes under. She has removed her anti-magic handcuff, which allows her to wild shape her way out and then remove everyone else as well.
She's able to push her arm and have a finger hole. And then when she sizes down, the snake can get out the finger hole and then pull everybody out. Those cubes are serious business. I fought one in my first ever D&D session my cousin ran. They disintegrated all our equipment. They're terrifying. But I love seeing it in this movie.
Yeah.
So that's how they get out. And now we're on a race to go. Let's go. She recognizes the basement and they go to confront Forge at this point, essentially.
They stop Forge. They win. It is game over. They successfully stage a coup on the craft he is using to escape with that is loaded with loot. They are not going to do what they promised Zank. Forge is out of the picture. They have Kira again. They have the Tablet of Resurrection again, right? And they're on their way. They don't need anything. Uh-oh.
Yeah. Movie's over, right? They're sailing away. They've accomplished their task. But then they turn around and they see this red smoke above the arena and very ominous things happening in the sky. And they're like, looks like we got to go back because we are good people after all. And we're going to try to save these people.
Right.
And,
this is the big finale, I guess, this whole last bit.
Kira has had a magic necklace that makes her invisible. I'm bringing that up for no reason.
Yeah. She got it from Holga when she was young, and they would use it to play games, and she's always had this her whole life.
Right. Then we realized 1 inch of glass was holding us back from our destiny, and it cuts to them smashing through it. And Michelle Rodriguez's face as she realizes she could just reach through and steal jewelry is great. She's like realizing it as she does it. She's like, oh.
This is easy. Yeah, that's the intelligence stat. That's a dump stat for barbarians. You don't use it,
Right.
Actually, every character in this has intelligence as a dump stat, which makes sense for the intellective hour.
The intellective hour.
But they go back, rude. Colin. What did Forge promise?
They go back. They set
everybody a gift. He promised everybody a gift, and that's kind of a mechanism to undo the.
Forge has been Oprah style saying, "Hang out and you'll look under your chair."
So they realize they need to get people out of the arena to stop them from turning into undead zombies. So they end up using the portal, the hither-thither staff, to shoot all the loot out of this balloon that has Forge's face on it, this hot air balloon coming out of his mouth in a very funny way, and fulfilling their promise by giving the loot to the townspeople. All the townspeople see all this loot coming out. They run out into the town, out of the arena. Sophina's like, what the fuck? I'm losing my army. And then we get a big boss fight, right?
We get the typical like party up against an evil wizard, Mike, which is that they just immediately start scamming are spamming fireball at you, and you just have to like run around. And be like, oh no.
This is so good. This whole last fight, because like you said, there's moments of everybody doing their magic and it's all realistic. They get fireballed. You have to, counterspell and all this stuff. I think it's just absolutely wonderful. I'll let you guys take it away on this.
We've gotten some hints that Sophia is extremely powerful. Simon keeps saying her magic is on another level. We understand that these red wizards can do stuff. All these spells that she is spamming at the end, which is like stone to life or whatever that one is, where she's bringing that stone dragon to life, fireball, as we keep saying. And then literally what I know is, I believe like a 10th level, like the highest level spell you can get, time stop.
It's a level 9.
That incredible level 9. I mean, like,
which is also what she did at the beginning of the game movie to get Ed and Holga caught.
It's basically JoJo. It's Tokyo Otomare. It's so overpowered. You can only cast it like once every fucking year. It's insane, like how costly it is in the game to cast time stop. And we couldn't counterspell it last time, but we, now that they
but
attempt
Simon
to.
literally says, Mike, but I got better, aka, but I leveled up. I'm a little better now.
But in this moment, she casts it. And it seems like all is lost. Our heroes are defeated. We're frozen in time once again. Simon couldn't do it. And she starts doing the most D&D thing ever, a monologue. And while she's monologuing, preparing, you're going to suffer 1,000 million years, it turns out invisible little Kira slipped the no magic bracelet on her hand. And that's it. We were all
Simon
pretending to stand still.
Did successfully counter the time stop, and they were just all pretending to be stopped. So they
which is so good.
The first time in the dungeon when you see time stop used, he just runs away. You see his hands go off, some sort of yellow power ignites between his fingers. You're kind of like, did he get a counter spell off? And it turns out he fucking did.
And the fact that they planned to we'll all stand still. We believe in you, Simon. So good.
Good party teamwork.
And there's just so much good D&D here. Like when she's
and then we
controlling the
owlbear
statue. Yeah, we could do that. I'll bear it out. That very Hulk in Avengers 1, right?
Yes, exactly.
It moves a little bit.
The wizard. Yeah.
Justice is done.
Yeah, I think so. And they're successful. Their quest is successful.
But little did we know, turns out Holga in the action has been stabbed with the red wizard's blade in a final emotional moment. There's no cure for it.
As we learned earlier, yes, once you're stabbed by a red wizard's blade, you can not cure it. You're just doomed, basically.
All right, so give me a little room here, because truly I'm on the verge of tears.
You go.
So I'm like watching, and I'm like, oh no, how have I ever had this much of an attachment to Michelle Rodriguez? So we know she's going. Literally, she starts to acknowledge it. She says, no, this is good. This is a good death. It's what she wanted before. She said, I want to die for something honorable, right? Today's a good day to die. And you get the flashback that pays off to maybe something we haven't built up enough. But if you watch this film, this feeling of, because there's been this whole dragonfly element to imply the presence on his mind of Chris Pine's ex-wife, of Ed's lost wife. And he just hasn't been seeing the truth that is in front of him, which is, we got these earlier flashbacks that I was at my lowest period. I was a drunk when my wife died. I would lay on the floor of a bar, and then a very nice lady came around and took pity on me, the baby mostly, but also me. And you see this woman just assume this natural role that isn't hers. It's not like she set out or had this child, but motherhood is just something that comes easy to her, to the right person. She is Kira's mother.
Yeah.
And you get these flashbacks that have been hinted at. Yes, we've seen them interacting in this earlier stuff or running around, and yes, the bug stuff. But now you get very genuine B-roll footage that is like her teaching Kira how to punch. As a little girl, they're dancing. She's helping her walk for the first time. And you realize, again, movies just make it seem so simple, these cut forwards in time. But they had this entire life together where this woman was raising her as her own. Yeah. And Ed finally admits, he gave this speech earlier to a doppelganger, it turns out. But I wasn't trying to save your mother. I was trying to save my wife. It's not that I've ever been doing this for you. I miss the special one in my life. And he makes the right choice at the end here to say, I want to use it on her. And she agrees. And they both say, the only one. We're going to use this tablet of resurrection to bring her back. And it is just the performance Michelle Rodriguez does, because she goes so quietly, and then they have this small conversation, make this choice. And her first lines when she comes back are, "Oh no, you wasted it on me?"
Yeah.
I mean, it is devastating. She is playing such a just a loving character that I gotta say, guys, again, she's doing amazing work here. I don't know.
She really is.
Keep
I
in mind,
agree.
Chris Pine's whole motivation this whole time, even from the first quest in the beginning when they got caught and sent to jail, was to get this tablet of resurrection to resurrect his wife. He has a moment with the paladin where the paladin's
Yes,
well, keep
very
in
important.
mind, death is just like another plane of existence, and your wife might be just better off in this other plane. And
She's
you're bringing
been
her
there
back
so long, to bring her here would rob her of her new life. You're
Right.
oh.
And he's like, I don't care, I just want my wife back, blah, blah, blah. He has to choose, and he realizes that Holga is more of a mother to his daughter than her mother, because his daughter never knew her mother, because she died when she was a baby.
It's a little baby.
Yeah. So he ultimately has to make the choice to save Holga, which is a very emotional moment. And great scene.
Yeah,
Really
I
nice.
think it pays off great. I like slowly learning more about his history, as if he's opening up more to the people around him, to where, it was always a selfish motivation. He got bored with the Harpers because he wanted more money for his family. He stole the gold because he was selfish. He would talk himself into that it was for his family, but maybe it's for him. Oh, it's for my daughter to bring the wife back, but it's for me. So it was always selfishly motivated. Once he finally makes a choice that's selfless as a parent, what's in the best interest of his daughter? What does she need the most? That's incredible. That's great. I think it's a really strong, emotional beat. Same thing with Michelle Rodriguez, kind of as the true mother who raised this girl. I think
Yes.
perfect non-traditional family. I love it.
And literally hitting the hammer on the head and just striking the point home. They end it with, of course, everyone is paid off for this incredible job. The Lord of Neverwinter reawakens, Forge is repunished, blah, 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 all this good stuff. And you get Chris Pine at the end, whose daughter says, well, aren't you going to go back to your life or, whatever family you have? And he says, look around, this is my family. And, it's what it's all been about. It's just the people that you make a part of your life.
Yeah,
exactly. It's the bonds of people you play D&D with, you go on adventures, whatever, you live through it. Even just playing the game at the tabletop, I have some of the strongest friendships from people that I started doing that with.
And they're calling, Mike. They're trying to get Regé-Jean Page's player to come back to the games. They're like, please.
What if we move it to every third Sunday?
Yes, every third Sunday, please. And he's like, my wife, I just truly can't.
Right.
Or maybe let's set it up for the one shot. But he planted that seed. I think, I think that's pretty much the wrap up. We knew
that's the movie.
The old ruler was poisoned by, it's all been a plot from the Red Wizard.
Yes.
Since the beginning. So
and
that's just
like
a
worm
thing.
tongue situation. Yeah.
And the Emerald Enclave is good now and, taken care
the
of.
The city
but
and the elves are homies. Everyone's happy.
We're shaking hands. But literally Doric's last line is Zam Tazaban isn't going to be happy about this, or whatever. The guy,
because the ultimate big bad, the head of the Red Wizards is still alive.
And Chris Pine's well, we're not worried about him because whatever. And me as a fan, I'm make 100 more of these. I don't necessarily need Zam Tazaban or whatever to be movie number 2 or whatever. So you can maybe drop that thread.
Yeah, I would love.
No, but we do get a return of Zam Tazaban. In a little, sting at the end. He's just still walking in a straight line when Forge has gotten away.
Paladin. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I think.
Oh, Zank has another scene post cred.
No, he comes up to Forge, not post cred.
Oh yes, he does come up to Forge.
Sorry, I got the Paladin wrong, but he's walking. Yeah, we'll see what they do with that big bad. I guess. Yeah. If they do that immediately, you can hold on to it for a bit.
Sequel. Yeah.
You guys remember when he was a shadow talking, right?
Yeah.
That's the craziest scene in the movie.
He's just a little Voldemort.
Yeah. Regarding sequel talk, I know that they sort of talk to the directors. They're like, well, we haven't, we didn't plan for a sequel, but obviously if it does well enough and the studio wants it, we'd love to come back and have these characters plus some new ones, blah, blah, blah. So you know what? You guys better make a sequel.
Name an actor you would add to that ensemble, Jacob, to make it just as fun. I have one.
Oh, no.
I'm staying in the Star Trek universe. Simon Pegg. I would throw in as a what do you say, Mike? An artificer. You know,
Oh,
something
yeah.
that's not super D&D, that's a little sci-fi mix into it. And I'd be like, this is perfect.
Sure.
Especially make him little. He could be a gnome artificer.
Oh my god!
That'd be
Oh,
great.
I'm
I feel like-
blasted in my pants right now. Yeah.
I mean, my go-to would be like Batista as like a barbarian or something. It might be too obvious, but he kind of twist to make him like a more like not just Drax
sensitive,
again, but...
sensitive chieftain of her tribe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But you know, I love Batista, so I think he would be great in this too.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's tough casting.
Could be.
Do you have a
could go
role?
lot
Do
of
you
ways.
have a class you would have liked to see, Mike?
That's a good point. Class wise,
Like a ninja. I mean, you truly could go to, or samurai. You could go to any of the other,
I
you
may
know,
do that,
oddball
too.
ones that
I'm
aren't
trying to think of
named.
classic D&D classes. You know, I like to see like a proper warlock, you know, with like a deity and stuff. That's an interesting
Or a
that they didn't
monk.
touch on. Monk would be fun too.
Monk
Yeah.
would be
Damn.
a really fun addition.
All right, yeah, get
Donnie Yen in the next fucking movie, Mike. This
Yeah.
thing would become your favorite franchise on the fucking planet.
Yeah, he'd be a
Yeah.
blind monk, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, we'd be blind, of course.
Yeah, it's contractually
Right.
obligated now.
Without a doubt.
Well, how about this? Let's that's the movie, guys. I think we talked through it. Let's go ahead and talk final thoughts, anything we'd want to see in future movies, and just kind of wrap this thing up, because I mean that's the end of our campaign. We'll see if we, you know, bring these same character sheets back or roll up new ones, but we'll be with you on the other side of this, Normies. Catch you in a minute.
We're back here on Normies Like Us, where we have been talking Dungeons and Dragons.
Honor amongst
Honor
thieves.
among, I almost said heroes among thieves. So this is where I reveal, I have told you guys this story, but I'm going to go ahead and say it on the podcast. Now, of course, this is a Hasbro film, an E1 company production, a Hasbro company, as all the titles say Hasbro 15 times, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
Now, longtime listeners might know, for new ones, my brother works at Hasbro. It's been such a blessing to my life to get to be a part of some very cool things because of him. I got to go to Comic-Con in the last year, where obviously what Hasbro was pushing the most was Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. And I got to go to a pop-up activation that was a full bar takeover 4DX experience of Honor Among Thieves that they had changed into like a tavern. And up close, I got to see people in the Dragonborn costumes, in the feather people costumes,
Mm-hmm.
and it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. They
That's
wouldn't
so
let us
cool.
take our cell phones or whatever for pictures, but I did sneak like a selfie of my brother and I looking at a screen that's like blasting green light at us and going like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah.
It was an experience where you all go in. They give you these goblets full of vodka that are just like smoking out. And you're cheersing, and everybody has potions and stuff, they're calling it, and you're drinking. And then a guy jumps up on a table and he's acting like, you know, like, I'm the barkeeper. And like, there's a, you know, crazy things going out in who knows what town. I think he said like River Run or something like that, right?
Yeah,
or
yeah.
Waterdeep, maybe one of the bigger like D&D locations.
Mm-hmm.
And it was centered on us watching a screen that would come to life with this 3D, 4DX experience of like wind blowing at you and stuff, of a
Right.
black dragon escaping from a swamp, where they were like, and that sets up the whole story for the film. Now, none of that occurs in the movie, so I would have to assume that was some sort of something that was maybe cut or something changed in the film, but it seemed to tie into nothing, honestly.
Well, you said a black dragon. Wasn't there
That
the
was
black
the
dragon that was
flashback
fighting the
sequence.
barbarians like 100 years
Yes.
ago during that battle, right?
So
Yeah.
technically, this one shot of a black dragon that's in the film, because it was related to the helmet, means the whole movie is related to that black dragon thing that you watch at Comic-Con. Yeah,
That's probably what it was.
But
That tracks.
It seemed like a very weird thing to tie to.
they fell back to
I'm gonna
plan
call
C or
it
D.
awesome.
Yeah.
It was one of the cooler experiences of my life. Shout
cool.
out to Kelly, the lady who put that on, who's literally like the brand manager of Dungeons and Dragons, who was like, we're going to my party right now. I set up the coolest event of all time. And she was right.
That's cool.
I just want to say, see this movie, because otherwise
Yeah.
Kelly's going to cry. She doesn't deserve that. She put together the
Well-
coolest party of all time. This movie rules.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, going into this, I saw advertisements for this thing everywhere. It's very heavily advertised. I knew it had good reviews going in on Rotten Tomatoes, had good mouth. it still exceeded my expectations, and it was
Far.
better than I ever expected it to be. And I was like, I fucking love this movie. You know,
God. As soon as I turn my phone off when I go to movies. I'm that guy. I just turn my phone off. You know, the kid next to me was a little younger. He pulled his phone out once, which is pretty good for a 2-hour movie. He was
That's
engaged
pretty
and
good.
laughing. But as soon as I turned that phone, I said, "This movie fucking rules." And I saw your text that said, "This movie's fucking great," because you sent that while I had the phone turned off and we were it's of a mind. I had no expectations for this. Again, I thought like they're just gonna fuck it up. You know, like they don't know D&D, like they don't get video game movies, like they don't get it. They're just gonna ruin it. It's gonna be a shitty fantasy movie.
Mike, I had so many expectations in my mind of just cleverness, wink, wink, of like, and then like, is it going to be revealed one of them's the dungeon master? Is it going to be revealed at some point that they are kids playing the campaign?
They're gonna try to be too meta with it.
Throw all that out and to not be clever,
globe.
winky, or meta or whatever, Jacob, and to just go, you don't need that. Like the golden goose here is the thing. And Jacob, point this out real quick. As we were sitting down, you were like, Hasbro not in the best position with Dungeons and Dragons right now.
Yeah,
no, there's been some controversy.
Bad PR leading up to this.
Yeah, they want people to pay because they feel like they're not getting enough money from people using their intellectual property, such as Critical Role streaming, a streaming situation. They want royalties from that, essentially.
The new CEO comes from Wizards of the Coast, which is, of course, the parent company that owned Dungeons and Dragons before being absorbed by the 5-headed Tiamat that is known as Hasbro.
Mm-hmm.
And that guy, yes, being in his new position and going like, I made fucking money off of Magic the Gathering hand over fist. I can make money off of Dungeons and Dragons easily. You nerds, if you're doing your little critical roles and enough people are watching it, we need a cut of that. Like, saying things like that. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, the IP wasn't monetizing at the level they thought it should. Which, terrible capitalist thing where there's like, oh, people are enjoying our stuff, but they're doing it for free because, well, they bought the, manuals and stuff, but now they're, just having fun with it like you're supposed to. Like,
have you noticed people like this thing we made money off of, but not enough money?
We should be making more money.
It's literally never been more popular than it has ever been in its history of existing. Yet that's not good enough.
No.
Yeah.
Luckily, they've retracted a lot of that, but it was a really greedy move. Yeah, Hasbro too.
They've had some other,
questionable
not
moves.
Great things going on. So, but it might be a big year for them because they've got, Transformers: Rise of the Beast coming out soon.
Did you get a trailer for that, Mike? At this?
Of course. Yeah. They turned the volume
up. Hasbro to Hasbro, baby. We got some good trailers.
Ninja Turtles.
Yep.
Good trailers.
Ninja Turtles looks great on a big screen. The Turtles trailer, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Like that animation style.
The animation looks amazing.
But back to the D&Ds.
Wrap it up with the final thoughts. I wanted to shout out one moment that, again, I feel like we're talking about the comedy of it all, the MCU quippiness that people are kind of getting tired of. I feel like this movie is like better than like every MCU movie, especially like the last couple of years. Just like, it's just a really solid popcorn blockbuster that just, it's not doing anything too like insane or like ambitious, but it's just really nailing what it is.
Jacob, did you see the Men in Black sequel with Chris Hemsworth and Tysa Thompson, who are Marvel stars? Mike, have you seen that?
No, I haven't. I didn't know. I had no interest.
You got the Thor reunion, right?
That is literally a blockbuster where I feel them going like, you can make this like Marvel, right? Just make the Marvel one of it. And you're like, that's the worst. If they had gone into this film with that attitude, it would have been disastrous. And they didn't.
There's no scene where something happens and then a character goes, well, that just happened, We're like, he's right behind me, isn't he? There's no humor like that that's just been overused. Like all the jokes in this really work.
Cliche.
They're like original, and again, they're just respectful of the source material in a way, but it's still really funny. And I wanted to point out one moment again that really highlights this humor and also the dynamic of, again, Holga and Ed's relationship. So after, she goes to see her ex-husband, she's like a little bummed out. She comes back out. He starts playing a song on the lute and singing, right?
I really like this, dude.
In a lesser movie, she would just like roll her eyes, or there'd be something like, whatever. But she instead just starts joining in with him, and they just sing this song, and it raises her spirits. And it's just this nice
And
moment.
Jacob, the last scene for her is when she's dying. She takes her daughter and her life partner's hands and starts singing that song, and they both sing it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Incredible.
So, yeah. Just want to shout that out. And great movie. Go see it. Yeah. A lot of fun.
I can't believe it.
Yeah, I'll do my last thoughts before I have mentioned a couple things that I think would be cool that they didn't take advantage of. But one D&D thing I forgot. He just grabs the when they're doing the heist, he grabs the rune that he needs. It has an invisible little string. It's trapped. Always check for traps, guys. Come on. Always check for traps. You know how many boxes I've opened and gotten poison arrowed because I'm too excited? Like, come on. That's so right. Great D&D stuff, but it's got so much heart. And again, we have Shazam 2, Black Adam, Ant-Man and the Wasp. This is better than all of those from what I can understand from 100%. The two that I haven't seen, but
I think the box
getting better ratings
is showing that because so Ant-Man had a big opening weekend, but then a huge drop off after the first week. Mm-hmm. Shazam underperformed, but the things that are hitting right now, John Wick, Scream, this movie, all doing well at the box office so far.
Both Paramount, Scream, and this.
Yeah, I think people are kind of getting sick of these superhero movies. Not to say that they can't still be good ones. I think Guardians.
I don't think they can
will be good.
This will be better than Guardians 3. That's my take.
Probably.
I would love that. That would really
absolutely.
I would be very excited if that was true. Here's the thing.
Strong, I feel.
We're talking about going again. Jacob's already said, like, you should probably go again, man. Like, if you want to get that popcorn bucket.
Get that popcorn.
In my mind,
go,
I do.
Baby.
But here's the other thing. We didn't see it in 3D as we are kind of prone to do sometimes. But I have heard the IMAX for this is dope.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I might try to track that down.
I saw this in IMAX, yeah, and it was dope.
Oh, you saw it in IMAX?
Yeah.
Dog!
That was the one Showtime that was available for me, and it was very sick. It looked great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Again, it's better than I ever expected, better than it has any right to be. I thought it would be like the Warcraft movie from a few years ago that Duncan Jones made that was not very good. Yeah. There's been so many of these fantasy movies that just don't.
And I've even been mean to Vox Machina, the Critical Role Amazon show on past ones. I'll come around and say in like the past 2 weeks, I've kind of restarted that animated series on Amazon and really enjoy it actually. So there is good D&D content, but Jacob, I'm with you where it's like, oh, Dungeons and Dragons movie, right? We haven't even mentioned the Dungeons and Dragons movie I saw in theaters as a kid.
Right.
No.
It was not like this movie.
You would have to drag me to the theater in irons to get me to watch that again.
Jeremy Irons.
Yeah, so there is also I think it's Joe Manganiello is going to be doing a Dragonlance, which is in the D&D universe, which could have a different tone, but we could see many similar kind of the art style of this universe could become like its own fantasy setting, is bringing the cinematic kind of realms of D&D out there, and Dragonlance will be in a different location. But so there's stuff happening. Sure. I heard rumors of a TV show now, and this is doing well. So this could become a big thing. I hope quality maintains.
Netflix has that Dragon Age Origins. What is that? That's a video game?
That's
Dragon
a video
Age
game.
Origins is a video game, BioWare.
Yeah.
Is that
it's not D&D.
Netflix?
It's not D&D. Not
Netflix has an animated of that.
Dragon Age is its own fantasy series that has a lot of traditional tropes of fantasy, but
okay.
But again, this game or this movie is set in the same world of the Baldur's Gate games, Neverwinter Nights, Icewind Dale. It's Faerun, the sword.
Should we run these characters? Should we play a game of Baldur's Gate 3 as
probably?
They have the characters stat sheets. They have them online.
Oh, really? That's a fun thing to make.
I would do that.
Cool.
That's right.
See, look how much we love this.
With these characters.
That's the only way we'll finally play online. Great.
Yeah.
So to get us going, we're almost at runtime of the movie, not quite yet. 15 more minutes, we'll get there. But
let's get out of here.
I have a question. D&D things that are cool. Do you know what a bag of holding is?
For sure.
Yes.
We need that. The next thing, hijinks with the bag of holding. I'm hiding like a whole displacer beast in my bag. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Infinite storage.
Pocket
immovable
dimension.
rod. You know, immovable rod? You put the rod down, it can't be moved, no matter what, unless the user moves it. So you just put it in front of a train, not going anywhere. Just hijinks, right? Wow. And the final thing I would like to see in the next movie is the deck of many things. You know what that is?
Sure.
Pull a card out, anything can happen, and you have to accept the fate. And you say how many cards, and you have to do them all. They can buff you, they can fuck you up. It's just like this random, wild thing. So anyway, So they didn't even touch all like the main tropey stuff. I guess what I'm saying. They did
There's
such a
plenty
good
of
job.
stuff that could be in a sequel for sure.
Absolutely. There's so much there, and I think they did a great job.
Endless.
Like this episode, so I'll stop talking.
Yeah, I just Normies, please, last bag, go see this movie.
Please.
If you do, hit us up at Normies_like_us and say, Olga was my favorite part when they played the Fast 10 trailer. I could barely recognize her because in my mind now she's Olga. I'd be like, yes, that's right.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And thanks for sticking with us on this episode of Morton Kyman's Pot of Bros. You know?
Yeah, and just
We're gonna disarm
gush
it
about this movie.
That's right.
And by the link to this episode, you know that we enjoyed it. And yeah, go see it.
I think everybody support this. It's a movie that's doing something new and being true to the source material. Like they nailed it. So
yeah.
Congratulations.
And this is your host, and I'm gonna go with a class I'd like to see in the next one. This is Colin the Cleric.
This is good call. That's really good. Micromancer.
This is Jacob the Wood Elf Ranger, and I have a tail. Elves can have tails. Think about it.
I don't know.
Let us know if you think elves can have tails, listeners. Catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.